For 33 years, I was the static hum of a refrigerator in a room full of loud, charismatic appliances. My sister, Harper, was the main event. The homecoming queen who turned every family dinner into her personal press conference, while everyone toasted her golden life and perfect marriage. I was usually in the kitchen, silently scraping plates. They did not hate me. They simply forgot I existed until they needed someone to fix the internet connection. My name is Madison Cook, and for the first 33 years of my life, I existed primarily as a pause in the conversation. I was the breath my family took before they started talking about something more interesting. In St. Louis, Missouri, where the humidity clings to you like a second skin and family reputations are built on Sunday dinners and church attendance. I was not the black sheep. Being a black sheep requires a certain level of notoriety. It implies that people have strong feelings about you, even if those feelings are negative. I was not the black sheep. I was the beige wallpaper. I was the ambient hum of the refrigerator that you only notice when it stops working. And even then, your first reaction is annoyance, not concern. My sister, Harper, was the main attraction. She was the pleasant weather report everyone tuned in to see. Harper was 2 years older than me, a former homecoming queen with a smile that could disarm a traffic cop and a laugh that sounded like it had been engineered in a laboratory to induce happiness in others. She married Logan Pierce, a man with a square jaw and a job in insurance that nobody quite understood, but everyone respected because he drove a clean truck and shook hands firmly. Together, they were the golden couple of our social circle. Her social media feed was a curated gallery of blindingly white teeth, golden sunlight, perfectly groomed dogs, and a house that looked like it had been staged for a magazine shoot. When I was growing up, I learned to make myself small. It was a survival mechanism. If I was quiet, I could observe. I watched my father, Ron, light up whenever Harper entered the room, his chest swelling with a pride he never quite managed to summon when I brought home a report card with straight A's. I watched my mother, Denise, fuss over the hem of Harper's dress, her hands lingering with affection, while she would hand me a stack of napkins and tell me to go set the table in the other room. I was the logistics coordinator of their happiness, the backstage crew that made sure the stars had their water and their spotlight, while I remained in the shadows dressed in black. I left St. Louis as soon as I could, but I did not leave with a bang. I did not storm out with a suitcase and a Declaration of Independence. I simply faded away, much like I had lived. I moved to an apartment that smelled of stale carpet and old onions, and I took a job in technical support. For 5 years, I was a voice in a headset, telling frustrated strangers to try turning it off and on again. It was grueling, thankless work, but it taught me something valuable. It taught me how systems worked. It taught me that the most catastrophic failures often started with a single, overlooked line of code. While my family was busy praising Harper for hosting a successful 4th of July barbecue, I was studying. I took night classes. I obtained certifications that sounded like alphabet soup to my parents. I moved from fixing printers to securing networks. I learned how to build firewalls and how to hunt down vulnerabilities before they could be exploited. I stopped being the person who fixed the computer and became the person who protected the enterprise. 3 years ago, I was recruited by a firm called Aegis Harbor Security. When I told my parents, my mother paused on the phone and asked if that was a security guard company. I tried to explain that we handled digital infrastructure for Fortune 500 companies, that I would be dealing with encryption and threat analysis. She just hummed and said that Uncle Jerry had worked security at the mall once and it had been very hard on his knees. I stopped trying to explain after that. To them, I was simply doing something with computers. It was a vague, non-threatening box they could put me in, a box that didn't require them to ask any follow-up questions. I moved to Seattle, Washington. The distance felt like a physical shield. 2,000 miles of mountains and plains separating me from the feeling of being inadequate. I told them I had found a small place near the suburbs, something modest. I let them imagine a cramped studio apartment with a view of a brick wall, because that fit the narrative they had constructed for me. The struggling, solitary Madison, the one who needed their pity. Even if they never offered their help, the reality was quite different. I lived in a sleek, modern apartment in Belltown with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over Elliott Bay. On rainy mornings, I would stand with a cup of expensive coffee and watch the ferries cut through the gray water, feeling a profound sense of peace. I had money in the bank. I had a walk-in closet full of tailored blazers and silk blouses. I had a reputation in my industry as a ghost, someone who could slide into a compromised system, sanitize it, and vanish before the hackers even knew they had been evicted. But the habit of silence is hard to break. Every time I picked up the phone to call home, I shrank. I would dial the number, resolved to tell them about my promotion, or the new car I had bought, a German sedan with leather seats that smelled like success. But the moment I heard my father's voice, the words died in my throat. "Hey, Madison," he would say, his tone distracted, usually accompanied by the sound of a television in the background. "Hold on. The game is on commercial. How are you doing? Still working at that help desk place?" "It's a cybersecurity firm. Dad," I would say, my voice automatically lowering, losing its authority. "And I'm actually a senior consultant now. I just led a team that—" "That's nice, honey," he would interrupt, not out of malice, but out of a complete lack of interest. "Hey, did you see the pictures Harper posted this morning? They went apple picking. You should see the size of the pumpkin Logan carried. The guy is an ox. Your mother is already planning how to carve it for the front porch." And just like that, I was gone, erased. The conversation would pivot to Harper, to Logan, to the texture of their lives, the color of their curtains, the breed of their new puppy. I would sit in my beautiful apartment, looking at the rain streaking the glass, and listen to 5 minutes of a monologue about people who had never once asked me if I was happy. I would eventually hang up, feeling hollowed out, as if I were a ghost haunting my own life. I told myself I didn't care. I told myself I didn't need their validation. I was successful. I was independent. I was free. But the lie tasted like ash. We all want to be seen. We all want the people who made us to look at the finished product and nod in approval. Instead, I got pity. They assumed my silence was a sign of struggle. They assumed my lack of social media posts meant I had nothing to show. They thought I was drowning, and they were content to stand on the shore and describe how well Harper was swimming. Then came the invitation. It arrived in the mail. Heavy cardstock with gold-embossed lettering. It was for my grandmother, Evelyn Hart, her 79th birthday. Grandma Evelyn was the only person in the family who looked at me with anything other than glazed indifference. She was sharp, observant, and possessed a tongue that could strip the paint off a barn. She had been slowing down in recent years, her eyes clouding with age, but she was still the matriarch, the iron spine of the family. The invitation was for a formal dinner at a riverfront club in St. Charles. I held the card in my hands, feeling the weight of it. I had missed the last 3 Christmases. I had made excuses about work, about the cost of flights, about being sick, but I could not miss this. Grandma Evelyn had specifically written a note on the back of the card in her shaky, spiderweb handwriting. "Don't you dare skip this one. Maddie, I want to see your face, not hear your excuses." I sat down at my kitchen island, the marble cool against my elbows. My laptop was open in front of me. I had just finished closing a massive contract with a hospital network in the Midwest. It had been 6 months of grueling negotiations, penetration testing, and compliance audits. I had been the lead on the project. I had driven the strategy. And 10 minutes ago, an email had popped up in my inbox from the payroll department at Aegis Harbor. Subject: Commission Payout Confirmation. Q3. I clicked on it. The number stared back at me. It was not a small number. It was a number that could pay off a mortgage in some parts of the country. It was a bonus of $52,000. On top of my base salary, which was already comfortably in the 6 figures, I looked at the number. $52,000. Then I looked at the invitation. My phone buzzed. It was a text from my mother. "Don't worry about a gift for Grandma. Honey, we know things are tight for you." Harper and Logan are getting her a new recliner from the whole family. We will just put your name on the card. Okay? Love, Mom. I stared at the screen. We know things are tight for you. They didn't know. They had never asked. They had assumed. They had filled the silence of my life with their own comfortable fictions because it was easier than getting to know the stranger their daughter had become. They liked me small. They liked me struggling. It made Harper shine brighter by comparison. If I was the background noise, the static, then Harper was the melody. You can't have a melody without silence to contrast it against. But I wasn't silent anymore. I was the one holding the keys to the vault. I was the one securing the data of the hospitals where they went when they were sick. I was the one who could buy and sell their assumptions without blinking. Something shifted in my chest. It wasn't anger, exactly. It was colder than that. It was the feeling of a steel bolt sliding into place. It was the click of a lock engaging. I picked up my phone and typed a reply to my mother. I'll be there. Mom, I've already booked my flight. I didn't mention the gift. I didn't mention the money. I didn't correct her assumption that I couldn't afford a recliner. I turned back to my laptop and opened the travel site. I didn't look for the cheapest flight with 2 layovers, the way the old Madison would have done. I didn't look for economy class. I selected the direct flight to St. Louis. I selected first class. I entered my credit card information with the calm precision of a surgeon. Then I went to a car rental site. I scrolled past the compact cars, the economy sedans that smelled like cleaning fluid and desperation. I selected a luxury SUV, black, fully loaded. I sat back in my chair and looked out at the lights of Seattle reflecting off the dark water of the bay. The city was alive, humming with energy, millions of lives intersecting in the night. I was one of them. I was Madison Cook. I was a senior security consultant for Aegis Harbor. I was not a background noise. I was a frequency they had not tuned into yet. I looked at the invitation one last time. Okay, Grandma, I whispered to the empty room. I'm coming home. But I wasn't going back as the dutiful, quiet daughter who sat at the kids' table and nodded politely while Harper talked about her renovations. I wasn't going back to be the prop in their family play. I was going back to show them what happens when you ignore the quiet ones for too long. I stood up and walked to the window. My reflection ghosted against the glass, superimposed over the city lights. I looked different than the last time they saw me. My hair was cut sharper, an angular bob that meant business. My posture was better. My clothes were armor. I tapped the screen of my phone, bringing up the email with the commission notification again. $52,000, just for 1 quarter. I thought about the pity in my mother's text. We will just put your name on the card. No, I said aloud. You won't. I was going to St. Louis, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to turn down the volume. I was going to turn it up. I was going to force them to hear the static. I was going to make sure that by the time I left, they would understand that the background noise was actually the sound of the engine that ran the world. I closed my laptop. The screen went black. The decision was made. The ticket was booked. The money was in the bank. It was time to go make some noise. The venue for my grandmother Evelyn's 79th birthday was the River Club in St. Charles, a place that smelled of old money and lemon polish. It was the kind of establishment where the lighting was always kept at a golden amber hue, designed to smooth out wrinkles and make inexpensive jewelry sparkle just a little bit brighter. Outside, the Missouri River flowed by, dark and sluggish in the humid evening. But inside, the air conditioning was humming a low, expensive tune that kept the atmosphere crisp. A jazz trio was playing in the corner, the saxophone weaving through the chatter of the guests like a polite intruder. I arrived exactly 7 minutes past 7 in the evening. In the past, I would have arrived 20 minutes early to help set up, or 20 minutes late because I'd been hesitant to walk through the door. Tonight, I arrived with the precision of a Swiss train. I handed my keys to the valet, a young kid who looked at my black luxury rental SUV with appreciative eyes, and smoothed the front of my jacket. I was not wearing the floral prints or pastel cardigans that my mother usually picked out for me during Christmas sales. I was wearing a charcoal structural suit, tailored to within a millimeter of my life, with a silk camisole underneath that caught the light like liquid mercury. My hair was sharp. My makeup was minimal but deliberate, and on my wrist sat a watch that cost more than the first car my father had ever bought when I walked into the private dining room. The conversation didn't stop, but it certainly stumbled. My Aunt Linda was the first to see me. She was mid-sentence, probably complaining about her homeowners association. When her eyes drifted to the door and stayed there, she blinked, once, twice, as if trying to reconcile the image of the niece she remembered, the one with the frizzy hair and the nervous posture, with the woman standing in the archway. "Madison?" she asked, her voice carrying just enough doubt to be insulting. That was the cue. Heads turned. My father, Ron, looked up from his scotch. My mother, Denise, froze with a canapé halfway to her mouth, and there, holding court in the center of the room under the crystal chandelier, was Harper. She was wearing a dress the color of champagne, shimmering with sequins, her blonde hair cascading in perfect waves over her shoulders. She looked like a trophy. She looked beautiful, and for the first time in my life, I looked at her and didn't feel a pang of envy. I felt like I was looking at a very expensive, very fragile vase. "Hello, everyone," I said. My voice was calm, pitched low. It cut through the jazz trio's bass line effortlessly. "Oh, Madison!" My mother recovered first. Rushing over to me, she went for a hug, but I shifted my weight slightly, extending a hand to touch her arm instead. It was a subtle rejection of the embrace, a boundary drawn in invisible ink. She faltered, then patted my shoulder with a flutter of nervous energy. "You made it. We weren't sure. Well, with your schedule and everything, you look different." "I look tired," I lied smoothly. "Long flight." "Well, come in. Come in." Denise ushered me toward the group, her voice rising an octave as she switched into hostess mode. "Everyone, Madison is here. She took time off from her computer things to be here for Mom." She introduced me to a distant cousin's new fiancé with a wave of her hand. "This is Madison. She does tech support or something out west, very busy with the machines." Before the fiancé could even say hello, Denise had already pivoted, her body physically turning away from me to gesture at Harper. "And of course, you know Harper. She just finished redesigning the patio." "Harper, show them the pictures of the pergola. It is absolute perfection. Logan put up the beams himself." It was a masterclass in dismissal. In under 30 seconds, I had been categorized, labeled as the family IT help, and shoved back into the shadows so the spotlight could return to the golden child. I didn't flinch. I didn't try to correct her. I just walked over to the bar, ordered a sparkling water with a twist of lime, and watched. Logan was standing by the window, swirling a glass of red wine. He looked me up and down, his eyes narrowing slightly. Logan was a man who understood value. He sold insurance. His entire worldview was based on risk assessment and asset valuation. He was looking at my suit. He was looking at the way I held myself. He was confused. The data points weren't lining up. "Hey, Madison," he said, offering a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Good to see you. How's the help desk life?" "It has its moments," I said, taking a sip of water. "Still living in that little studio?" he asked, loud enough for the group to hear. "Market is crazy out there. I hear Seattle, right? Or are you outside the city?" "I'm managing," I said. We moved to the dinner table. It was a long table covered in white linen, set for 20 people, by some unspoken law of family dynamics. Harper was seated to the right of Grandma Evelyn. Denise and Ron were on the left. I was placed at the far end, near the kitchen door, next to Uncle Jerry, who was already complaining about the price of gas. Grandma Evelyn sat at the head of the table like a queen on her throne. She looked frail, her skin like parchment paper, but her eyes were bright blue lasers scanning the room. She ignored the toast my father made. She ignored Harper's loud story about her dog's grooming appointment. Suddenly, Evelyn tapped her spoon against her glass. The sharp ring silenced the table. "Madison," she said. Her voice was raspy but commanding. Everyone turned to look at the end of the table. I looked up from my salad. "Yes. Grandma?" "You're too quiet," she said. "You didn't fly 2,000 miles to listen to Harper talk about a dog. Tell me where you are living. Your mother says you are in a basement somewhere." Denise laughed. A nervous, twittering sound. "Oh, Mom, I didn't say basement. I just said she's probably in a shared place. You know how expensive it is. It's probably somewhere in Tacoma. Right, Madison? That's near the airport, isn't it?" She said Tacoma, the way one might say landfill. It was a guess. A dismissive geography tossed out to lower expectations. She wanted me to be struggling. It fit the narrative, if I was struggling. Harper was winning. It was a zero-sum game in her mind. I placed my fork down on the edge of my plate. I wiped my mouth with the linen napkin and folded it neatly on my lap. I looked at my mother, then at Harper, and finally, I locked eyes with Grandma Evelyn. "Actually, no," I said. The silence in the room stretched thin. "I live in Belltown. I have a corner unit penthouse overlooking Elliott Bay. I can see the ferries coming in from the islands while I have my coffee." Denise blinked. "Penthouse? Rent must be astronomical. Do you have roommates?" "No roommates," I said softly. "And I bought it last year." A fork clattered onto a plate somewhere down the table. Harper stopped chewing. "Bought it?" Ron asked, his voice rough with disbelief. "In Seattle? How the hell did you manage that fixing computers?" I turned my gaze to my father. "I don't fix computers. Dad, I secure enterprise infrastructures." I took a sip of my water, letting the words hang in the air for a second before delivering the payload. "In fact, last week, my firm just signed a comprehensive security contract with the Midwest Regional Hospital Network. You know the one? The chain that owns the hospital where you had your knee surgery." I paused, letting the recognition set in. That hospital chain was the biggest employer in 3 states. "I am the lead consultant on that account," I continued, my voice steady, devoid of bragging, just stating facts like I was reading a weather report. "It is a 4-year contract. I'm responsible for the data privacy of about 3 million patients, including yours." The silence that followed was absolute. It was not the polite silence of a lull in conversation. It was the shocked silence of a room full of people realizing the furniture had been rearranged while they were blinking. Harper, who had been sipping her Cabernet, suddenly coughed violently. A drop of red wine splashed onto her chin. She hacked, patting her chest, her eyes wide and watering. Logan didn't even move to pat her back. He was staring at me. He was looking at me with a mixture of horror and fascination. Like he had just discovered that the rusty bicycle in the garage was actually a vintage motorcycle worth a fortune. "You're the lead?" Logan asked, his voice cracking slightly. "On the Midwest contract? I read about that in the business journal. That deal was worth—" He trailed off, doing the mental math. "It was a significant contract," I said, closing the subject. "Happy birthday, Grandma." I smiled at Evelyn. She wasn't shocked. She was grinning, a small, wicked grin that showed off her dentures. She raised her glass to me. The energy in the room shifted instantly. It was palpable, physical, like a change in air pressure before a storm. The dismissal was gone. In its place was a hungry, predatory curiosity. Suddenly, I wasn't Madison the background noise. I was Madison the asset. Uncle Jerry, who had been ignoring me to eat his roll, suddenly leaned in, his elbow knocking into my space. "So, Madison, security? Huh? That's big business. What do you think about crypto? I've got this buddy who says—" "Madison," Aunt Linda interrupted from across the table, her voice shrill with feigned interest. "I've been thinking about diversifying my portfolio. Do you get stock options? What sectors are you looking at?" "How do you even get into that field?" another cousin asked. "My son plays video games all day. Could he do what you do?" They peppered me with questions. They asked about investments. They asked about the housing market in Seattle. They asked how one makes that kind of money. They didn't ask if I was happy. They didn't ask what the work was like. They asked about the yield. They were treating me like a slot machine that had just paid out a jackpot, and they all wanted to know how to pull the lever. I answered them with vague, polite deflections, enjoying the way Harper sat in silence. She had wiped the wine off her chin, but the stain remained on her ego. She looked small. For the first time, her stories about the dog and the patio seemed trivial. She tried to jump back in, loud and desperate. "Well, Logan and I are thinking about a boat," she announced, her voice too high. "For the weekends." "Boats are a depreciating asset," Logan muttered, not looking at her. He was still looking at me. "Madison, when you say lead consultant, does that mean you're on a partner track?" Harper flinched as if he had slapped her. The dinner continued, but the hierarchy had been shattered. I ate my salmon, tasting every bite. I watched my mother try to reconcile her version of me with the reality sitting across from her. She looked confused, almost hurt, as if my success was a personal betrayal because I hadn't warned her to update her script. As the dessert was being served, a flourless chocolate cake that looked better than it tasted, I excused myself to go to the restroom. I needed a moment to breathe, to drop the mask of cool indifference for just a second. I washed my hands in the marble sink, staring at my reflection. I had done it. I had turned the volume up. When I stepped back out into the hallway, Harper was waiting for me. She was leaning against the wall, her arms crossed over her sequined chest. The lighting in the hallway was dimmer, casting long shadows across her face. She looked tired. The bright, bubbly homecoming queen facade had slipped, revealing the stress lines around her eyes and the tightness in her jaw. She pushed off the wall as I approached. "That was quite a show," she said. Her voice was light, but there was an edge to it, like a razor blade hidden in a ball of cotton. "I was just answering Grandma's question," I said, keeping walking. She stepped in front of me, blocking my path. She reached out and touched my arm. Her fingers were cold. Her face softened, shifting into an expression I recognized from 1,000 Instagram photos, the look of sisterly adoration. It was practiced. It was perfect. "No, really," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I'm proud of you. Maddie, we all are. It's just, we didn't know. You didn't ask," I said. She let out a small, self-deprecating laugh. I know. Life just gets so crazy, you know? With the house and everything, I feel like I haven't actually talked to you in years." She squeezed my arm. "Hey," she said, leaning in closer, smelling of expensive wine and desperation. "Are you free tomorrow morning? Before you fly out? Let's grab coffee. Just the two of us. No mom. No dad. I really miss my little sister." She smiled, and it was the sweetest thing I had ever seen. It was sugar-spun and radiant, and I knew, with the certainty of a cryptographer spotting a pattern in the code, that she was lying. She didn't miss me. She had just realized I was the most expensive thing in the room, and she wanted to see if she could carry me home. "Sure, Harper," I said, matching her smile with a cold one of my own. "I'd love that." The coffee shop Harper chose was one of those places that served drinks in mason jars and charged $7 for a piece of toast because they sprinkled artisanal sea salt on it. It was 10 in the morning. The sun was cutting through the windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air, creating a false sense of serenity that shattered the moment my sister sat down. She looked perfect. Of course, even her exhaustion was curated. She wore oversized sunglasses and a slouchy sweater that probably cost more than my first car. But she slumped into the chair with the weight of the world on her shoulders. She took off her glasses, revealing eyes that were skillfully rimmed with just enough redness to suggest a sleepless night. But not enough to look ugly. "I am so sorry I am late," she exhaled, signaling the waiter without even looking at him. The alarm didn't go off. Well, it did, but Logan turned it off because he knows I haven't slept more than 4 hours in a week. God, Madison, you look so fresh. It must be nice to just Wake up and only have to worry about yourself. There it was, the compliment with the hook. You look good wrapped around you are selfish. I have my own stressors, I said, taking a sip of my black coffee. But it is good to see you. Harper. It is, she said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. Her palm was warm. I meant what I said last night. I miss you. It's just life, you know? It is relentless. Logan is working 60-hour weeks, and we still feel like we are treading water. The mortgage on the house, we took a variable rate because everyone said it was smart, and now it is eating us alive. She paused, letting the silence stretch. This was the gap. This was the empty space I was supposed to fill. In the past, I would have offered to help with chores or babysit, but we both knew my currency had changed. Is it that bad? I asked. It is tight, she whispered, looking down at her latte art. We had to cut back on everything. I even canceled my Pilates membership, and you know that is the only thing that keeps me sane. But we have this credit card bill from the landscaping. We wanted the yard to be nice for the family BBQ next month, but now the interest is hitting, and I don't know where the $2,000 is going to come from by Friday. $2,000. To me, that was a rounding error on a consulting invoice. To her, it was evidently a mountain. I can pick that up, I said. The words left my mouth before I could process them. It was a reflex. I wanted the anxiety to leave her face. Harper looked up, her eyes widening. What? No, Maddie, I wasn't asking you to. I know, I interrupted. But I can. Send me the details. Call it a late birthday present for yourself. Oh my God, she breathed, and the relief that washed over her face looked genuine. Are you sure? I mean, that would save my week. You are an angel. You are literally an angel. She didn't say thank you as much as she validated my existence. The dopamine hit was instantaneous, for the first time in years. I wasn't the background noise, I was the solution. We were halfway through our second round of drinks when Logan walked in. He wasn't supposed to be there. He was supposed to be at work, but he strode in with a furrowed brow, spotting us immediately. I thought I might find you here, he said. Pulling up a chair without asking, he nodded at me. Madison, everything okay? Harper asked, her voice pitching up. It is the truck. Logan sighed, rubbing his temples. The transmission again. It was making that grinding noise on the highway this morning. I barely got it to the shop. Mechanic says it is unsafe to drive. He says the whole axle is shot. He looked at me, then back to Harper. I don't care about me, but I can't drive you around in a death trap. Remember that crash on the interstate last month? I need you to be safe. He didn't ask for money. He asked for safety. He framed it as a protective instinct, which made it impossible to ignore without looking like a monster. If I had the means to ensure my sister didn't die in a fiery car wreck, and I didn't use them, what kind of sister was I? How much to fix it? I asked. Logan hesitated, performing a mental calculation that I suspected he had rehearsed in the mirror. To do it right? To make it safe? Probably around $4,500, but we don't have that kind of liquidity right now. I'll probably just patch it and hope for the best. Don't patch it, I said, pulling out my phone. I opened my banking app. I'll transfer $5,000, fix the truck, get new tires if it needs them. I don't want Harper in an unsafe car. Logan stopped rubbing his temples. He looked at me with a reverence that was almost religious. Madison, you don't have to do that. I want to, I said, and I did. I wanted to be the one who could fix the unfixable. I wanted to be the hero of the story, not the extra. By the time I left the coffee shop, I was $7,000 lighter, but I felt strangely buoyant. I had bought my way into the inner circle. The high lasted until I got back to my hotel room. That was when my mother, Denise, called. Maddie, she chirped. Her voice sounded lighter than it had in a decade. Harper just texted me. She said you guys had the best talk. She said you are doing so well. I am so proud of you. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed, kicking off my heels. Thanks, Mom. You know, she continued, her voice drifting into a nostalgic reverie. I was looking at the kitchen this morning. You remember how I always wanted to knock out that wall? Make it an open concept so I can actually talk to people while I cook during Thanksgiving, instead of being stuck in that little box? I remember, I said. I got a quote 3 years ago, she said. It was too much then, but I was looking at the tiles today. They are cracked, Maddie, and I tripped on the linoleum yesterday. It's becoming a hazard. I'm not getting any younger. I have this dream of hosting everyone for Christmas in a beautiful, open kitchen. But your father? Well, you know the pension is fixed. She let the sentence hang there, a dangling modifier waiting for a savior. How much for the renovation? Mom? Oh, I couldn't ask, she said immediately. It's silly. It's just $15,000 would get the demolition and the new cabinet started. It would change everything. It would make the house worthy of us. Worthy of us. As if the house was the problem, and not the people inside it. I'll send it, I said. Consider it my contribution to Christmas. Oh, Madison! She actually sobbed. A short, sharp intake of breath. You are such a good daughter. I always knew you had a big heart. I told Ron. I said, Madison might be quiet, but she feels things deeply. I'll tell the contractor tomorrow. She hung up before I could change my mind. 5 minutes later, my father called. Ron was never good at small talk. He didn't chirp. He grunted. Your mother told me, he said. His voice was gruff. Hi, Dad. You shouldn't let her spend that on cabinets, he said. But there was no force behind it. But, listen, since you are helping out, I wasn't going to say anything. I'm a proud man. Madison, you know that. I know, Dad. The insurance, he said, his voice dropping so low I had to press the phone to my ear. They denied the claim for the anesthesia on my knee surgery, said it was elective or some bureaucratic nonsense. The hospital is sending letters, collection letters. They are threatening to hit my credit score. I can't have a lien on the house. Madison, how much is the bill? $3,240, he said. He knew the number to the cent. I'll take care of it, I said. Send me the account number. You're a good kid, he said. The words felt clumsy in his mouth, like he was speaking a foreign language. I mean it. You stepped up. I transferred the money. Then, the family group chat, a digital space I had been part of but largely ignored in, exploded. Usually, the chat was a shrine to Harper. Photos of her latte, photos of her dog, photos of Logan grilling. I was rarely mentioned, and never tagged. Suddenly, my phone started buzzing like an angry hornet. Harper added Madison to the album, Family Dreams. Harper sent a photo. It was a picture of a brand new set of tires and a glossy brochure for a kitchen remodel. Harper. Look at this. Huge things happening this week. So blessed to have family looking out for family. Madison, you are seriously the best auntie/sister ever. Still crying over coffee this morning. Logan sent a gif of a man bowing down. Lifesaver, literally. Mom sent a string of heart emojis and prayer hands. My girls. So happy to see everyone helping each other. Madison, I am making your favorite pot roast when you come back for Christmas. The kitchen will be ready. I scrolled through the messages. For years, I had watched this feed from the outside, a spectator to their happiness. Now, my name was in every bubble. I was being tagged. I was being celebrated. I lay back on the hotel bed and stared at the ceiling. I knew, logically, that I had just spent over $25,000 in less than 6 hours. I knew that in my line of work, this was called a confidence trick. You give the target a little bit of affection. You create a sense of urgency, and you extract the assets. But it felt warm. That was the insidious part. It felt like being hugged. I read Harper's message again. You are seriously the best. I closed my eyes. Maybe I had been too harsh. Maybe they were just drowning, and I was the raft they had been waiting for. Maybe money was the only language they knew how to speak. And now that I was speaking it, we could finally understand each other. I imagined the Christmas dinner in the new kitchen. I imagined sitting at the table, not at the end, but in the middle. I imagined them listening to me. The phone rang again. I smiled, expecting another thank you, another hit of dopamine. I picked it up without looking at the caller ID. Hello? Madison? The voice was dry, cracking like old parchment, but sharp as a whip. It was Grandma Evelyn. Hi, Grandma, I said, sitting up. How are you feeling after the party? I'm old, Madison. I feel old, but my hearing is just fine. There was no warmth in her voice. There was a gravity that pulled the air out of the room. What do you mean? I asked, my smile fading. I was sitting on the porch about 20 minutes ago. Evelyn said. Her voice was slow, deliberate. Your sister came over to your parents' house. They didn't see me. I was behind the trellis with my iced tea. They were sitting on the patio furniture. Okay. I heard them talking. Madison, about you. They are happy, I said defensively. I helped them out with a few things. Mom is excited about the kitchen. They weren't talking about the kitchen, Evelyn said. Harper was laughing. She said, well, I don't want to repeat the foul language she used, but she told your mother that she couldn't believe how easy it was. I felt a cold prickle start at the base of my neck. How easy what was? She said she just had to look sad and mention a bill, and you opened your wallet like a… Evelyn paused, searching for the word. Like a vending machine that gives out free candy if you kick it right. And then Logan, he laughed. Madison, he said, at this rate, we won't have to pay for the vacation to Cabo ourselves. We just need to tell Madison the roof is leaking. The warmth from the group chat evaporated instantly, leaving a freezing hollow in my chest. Are you sure? I whispered. I am old, not senile, Evelyn snapped. And then your mother, she said something that broke my heart, child. She said, well, it is the least she can do. We put up with her awkwardness for 30 years. It is about time she paid rent for taking up space. I stopped breathing. The phone felt like a block of ice in my hand. Taking up space. I thought you should know, Evelyn said quietly. Before you send another cent, they don't see a sister. Madison, they see a bank vault that someone left unlocked. Thank you, Grandma. I managed to choke out. Don't thank me, she said. Just tell me what you're going to do. Because I heard something else. Something about a business idea Harper has, and she thinks you are going to fund it. I have to go, Grandma. Madison, she warned. I have to go. I hung up. The phone screen lit up with a new notification from the group chat. Harper tagged you. Hey sis, just had the wildest idea. Call me when you can? It is huge. I stared at the message. The text was accompanied by a smiley face emoji with hearts for eyes. It stared back at me, mocking, hollow, and expensive. I looked at the timestamp. She had sent it 2 minutes after Grandma said they were laughing on the patio. I stood up and walked to the window. St. Louis looked different now. It didn't look like home. It looked like a trap. I looked at the glass, seeing my reflection. The successful consultant, the woman who secured hospitals, the woman who just got played for $25,000 by the people who were supposed to love her. But the worst part wasn't the money. The worst part was that for a few hours, I had believed them. I didn't throw the phone. I didn't scream. I went very, very still. It was the stillness of a system administrator realizing there is a virus in the network. You don't panic. You isolate the infected nodes. You analyze the attack vector, and then you purge. But first, you wait to see what else they try to steal. I unlocked my phone and typed a reply to Harper. Sure, tell me everything. The phone call with Grandma Evelyn did not end with tears. Tears are a biological response to grief, and I was not grieving. I was analyzing. In my line of work, when a server is breached, You do not weep over the lost data. You isolate the compromised nodes. You study the intrusion method. You patch the vulnerability. And then, you make sure it never happens again. Grandma had given me the raw intelligence, the kind of zero-day exploit notification that every security professional dreads but respects. She told me about the barbecue that happened the day after I flew back to Seattle. I was not there, but through her description, the scene was rendered in high definition in my mind. The family sat on the patio, surrounded by the smell of grilled meat and the hum of cicadas, drinking the wine that I had unknowingly paid for. According to Evelyn, the conversation had turned to me. Not the new me, the successful executive, but the utility of me. "It is amazing," Denise had said, apparently laughing as she poured tea. We struggled for years to get her to talk, and all it took was a kitchen remodel to make her open up. And then Harper, my golden sister, had delivered the line that effectively severed the last remaining biological tether I had to these people. She had leaned back in her chair, the one paid for by Logan's commission checks, and said, "The funny part is, she thinks we really care. Like, she actually believes we are suddenly best friends because she paid for the truck repairs." Grandma Evelyn told me this with a voice devoid of pity. She was giving me the transcript of the enemy's chatter. She thinks we really care. I sat in my office in Seattle, looking out at the gray expanse of Elliott Bay. The rain was lashing against the glass, distorting the lights of the ferries. I did not feel anger. Anger is hot. It is messy. What I felt was the absolute zero of space. I felt the cold clarity of a system administrator realizing that the users were malicious. I decided then and there to implement a zero-trust policy. In cybersecurity, zero trust means exactly what it says. No one is trusted by default from inside or outside the network. Verification is required from everyone trying to access resources on the network. I would not block them. That would be too emotional, too reactive. A sudden block signals pain. It signals that the victim knows they have been hurt. I did not want them to know I was hurt. I wanted to know the perimeter of their greed. I wanted to map the exact dimensions of their transaction. Did they want a sister? Or did they want an ATM? I knew the answer. Of course. But I needed the data to prove it. So, I kept the channel open. I stayed in the group chat. I kept my tone light, breezy, and pleasant. I used the same emojis I had used before. I was the perfect, supportive sister and daughter. But I closed the wallet. The first test came 3 days after I returned to Seattle. Harper's wild business idea finally arrived in my inbox. It was a PDF, poorly formatted, outlining a vision for a lifestyle curation agency. Essentially, she wanted to get paid to tell people how to decorate their houses and what clothes to buy, leveraging her influence as a former homecoming queen and local socialite. The email was long on adjectives: passionate, visionary, aesthetic, and short on numbers, except for the last page, which detailed the seed capital required. She needed $40,000 to rent a studio space, build a website, and hire a photographer for her portfolio. The text message followed seconds later. Harper. Sent the deck. I am so excited. Logan thinks this is going to be huge. We just need that initial push to get flying. I put you down as a silent partner. Love you. I looked at the screen. A week ago, I would have been flattered. Silent partner. It sounded dignified. Now, I saw it for what it was. Silent meant, shut up. Partner meant, pay up. I typed my reply carefully. Madison. Wow. Harper, this looks like such a fun project. You have always had a great eye for style. I hit send. I waited. The 3 dots appeared immediately. Harper, right? I knew you would get it. So, for the transfer, do you want to wire it directly to our joint account, or should I open a business one? The studio space won't last long. The landlord said there is another offer, the urgency, the artificial scarcity. It was classic social engineering. Act now or lose the opportunity. Madison. Oh, I think you should definitely open a business account. It is much cleaner for taxes. But regarding the investment, my assets are currently tied up in a fixed-term trust for the next 6 months. My financial advisor is very strict, but I would love to help you review the business plan. Have you done a SWOT analysis? The silence that followed was heavy. I could practically hear the gears grinding in St. Louis. Fixed-term trust. It was a lie, but it was a boring, technical lie, the kind of lie that is hard to argue with without sounding desperate. Harper. Oh, I didn't know you had advisors. Can't you just move some cash around? It is only $40,000. You make that in a month, right? There it was. The entitlement. Madison. I wish. Everything is automated. But seriously, send me your market research. I can help you build a projection model. She didn't reply to that. She sent a thumbs up emoji. It was the grayest, most lifeless thumbs up I had ever seen. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in passive solicitation. My mother, Denise, was the next to ping the server. She sent a photo of a slab of marble. It was white with dramatic gray veining. Calicotta gold, one of the most expensive stones you can buy. Mom, look at this beauty. The contractor says this would make the island pop. It is a little over budget, about $8,000 more than the standard quartz. But he says it is an investment in the home's value. What do you think? She didn't ask for the money. She asked for my opinion, implying that if I liked it, I should pay for it. It was a bait hook hidden in a compliment. Madison. That is stunning. Mom, absolutely beautiful. But honestly, marble stains so easily with red wine and tomato sauce. With Dad cooking, quartz might actually be the smarter, more durable choice, and it saves money. I sent a heart emoji. I waited for the response. I imagined her staring at the phone, wondering why the vending machine wasn't dispensing the treat. She had kicked it. She had used the keyword investment. Why wasn't the cash coming out? Mom. Well, I guess I just wanted it to be special for when you come home. Madison. Being with you guys is what makes it special. The counter doesn't matter. Silence. Then came Ron. My father was less subtle. He sent a link to a listing for a used pontoon boat. Dad, guy at the lodge is selling this. Great engine. Perfect for the river. Says he needs to move it fast. $5,000 cash. Thinking about it, but the medical bills are still a headache. He was combining the desire, boat, with the guilt, medical bills. He was trying to trigger the good daughter protocol. Madison. That looks like a great boat. Dad, hopefully, once the insurance appeal goes through, things will clear up. Have you tried negotiating a payment plan with the hospital? I read that they often reduce bills if you offer to pay monthly. I offered advice. I offered emotional support. I offered everything except the one thing they actually wanted. The temperature in the group chat began to drop. It wasn't sudden. It was a gradual cooling, like winter setting in. The good morning sunshine texts from Harper stopped. The random photos of the dogs stopped. The tags stopped. I was no longer the best sister. I was just Madison again. But this time, I was Madison with a question mark attached. They couldn't figure out if I was broke, stupid, or broken. They never suspected I was awake. I sat in meetings at Aegis Harbor Security, advising CEOs on how to protect their intellectual property, and I felt a strange parallel to my personal life. I was watching threat actors probe a perimeter. They were looking for a weakness. They were trying different ports. Harper sent a photo of a sad-looking puppy. Vet says Buster needs dental surgery. Poor baby is in so much pain. $700. Ugh, why is everything so expensive? Madison. Aw, poor Buster. Give him a cuddle for me. Logan sent a link to a GoFundMe for a friend. Buddy of mine lost his garage in a fire. Tragic. Madison. Shared it on my LinkedIn. Hope he reaches his goal. I was giving them nothing but empty calories. Sweet, polite, and financially worthless. And as the money stopped flowing, the mask began to slip. The family that had embraced me so warmly 2 weeks ago began to dissolve. The text messages became shorter. The tone became clipped. Then came the shift in strategy. If honey doesn't work, try vinegar. It started with small jabs. Harper. Must be nice to just focus on work and not have real responsibilities. Some of us have families to take care of. I stared at that text. Real responsibilities. As if running security for a hospital network wasn't a responsibility. As if paying my own mortgage wasn't a responsibility. Madison. It is definitely a busy season. How is the business plan coming along? She didn't answer. Then my mother joined the offensive. Mom. Aunt Linda asked about you. She was surprised you didn't send a card for her anniversary. I told her you are just very busy with your corporate things. We all know you forget dates. I hadn't forgotten. I just hadn't sent a check. In the past, my card always contained $100. Without the cash, the card was apparently deemed non-existent. Madison. I sent her an email. I hope she got it. Mom. Emails aren't personal. Madison. People like effort, that was the word she used, to them. Effort was spelled C-A-S-H. I was ghosting them while standing right in front of them. I was present, but I was impenetrable, and it was driving them insane. They were like rats in a maze who had pressed the lever and received a shock instead of a pellet. They were confused, and confusion quickly turns to aggression. I received a notification from my bank, a request for transfer, $500, from Harper. The note said, groceries, emergency. I declined the request. I texted her directly. Madison. Hey, saw a request come through? I think your app might be hacked. I declined it just to be safe. You should change your password. It was petty. It was surgical. It was the most satisfying text I had ever sent. Harper didn't reply for 24 hours. When she did, the message was devoid of emojis. Harper. It wasn't a hack. I needed help. But forget it. I asked Mom. The guilt trip. The implication that I had forced our elderly mother to pay for her groceries. I didn't take the bait. Madison. Oh, good. Glad you got it sorted. I was holding the line. I was watching the traffic logs, and the data was conclusive. The volume of communication dropped by 90% once the financial incentives were removed. The love was statistically correlated to the transaction volume. It was a direct linear relationship. Grandma Evelyn called me once a week. We didn't talk about them much. We talked about books. We talked about the weather in Seattle. She was the only one who didn't ask for anything. She was the only one who was real. They are getting restless, she told me one evening in November. The kitchen isn't finished. The contractor walked off the job because Denise kept adding things she couldn't pay for. Now they have a hole in the wall and plastic sheets up. That sounds stressful, I said, sipping a glass of wine. Ron is telling people you promised to pay for the boat and then backed out, she added. He says you are unstable. Let him talk, I said. My credit score is 820. I am very stable. Be careful, Madison, she warned. A cornered animal bites. And Christmas is coming. Christmas, the ultimate leverage point. The Super Bowl of family guilt. I knew it was coming. I saw the signs. The chatter in the group chat started to pivot. They stopped asking for small things. They went silent for 3 days. It was the calm before the assault. Then, on a Tuesday morning in early December, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Denise. It wasn't a photo. It wasn't a link. It was short, stark, and designed to bypass all defenses. Wait, no. The language shifted in my head because the memory was so visceral, but the text was in English. Mom, come home early for Christmas this year. The whole family needs you. It was a summons. It wasn't a request. It implied a crisis. The whole family needs you. It was vague enough to be terrifying, specific enough to demand a response. I stared at the message. The cursor on my laptop blinked. I had a choice. I could ignore it. I could say I was working. I could stay in Seattle, safe in my tower of glass and steel. But a revenge story doesn't end with the protagonist hiding. A revenge story ends with the protagonist walking into the fire and putting it out. I needed to see their faces. I needed to see the hole in the wall where the kitchen used to be. I needed to see the business Harper was trying to build. I needed to verify, in person, that there was nothing left to save. And I had a feeling that this trip wouldn't be about writing checks. It would be about settling accounts. I picked up the phone. I didn't text back. I typed a new entry into my calendar. Trip to St. Louis, December 20th to December 26th. Objective, termination of service. I looked at the text from my mother again. The whole family needs you. No, I whispered to the empty room. You need what I have, and you are about to find out that the bank is closed, I replied. Madison. I'll be there. The trap was set, but this time I wasn't the prey. I was the hunter, and I was bringing the receipt. The air in Missouri was heavy with the scent of coming snow, a sharp, metallic tang that usually signaled a freeze. But inside my parents' house, the atmosphere was suffocatingly warm. It smelled of cinnamon, pine, and aggressive denial. I stepped through the front door on December 20th. Dragging my suitcase over the threshold, the house looked like a set from a Hallmark movie that had been funded by a credit card with a maxed-out limit. There were garlands wrapped around every banister, twinkling fairy lights draped over the mirrors, and a tree so large it seemed to be consuming the living room corner. It was a performance of abundance. It was a visual insistence that everything was fine, that the foundation wasn't cracking, and that the family within was whole. Madison! The scream came from the kitchen, or what was left of it. My mother, Denise, emerged from behind a sheet of heavy plastic that separated the dining room from the renovation zone. She was wiping her hands on an apron that read Mary Bright. She rushed toward me with a speed that defied her age, her arms wide open. You are here! You are actually here! She engulfed me in a hug that lasted 5 seconds too long. It wasn't the warm embrace of a mother greeting a child. It was the desperate clutch of a drowning swimmer grabbing a buoy. I felt her fingers dig into the wool of my coat. I stood stiffly, patting her back with a rhythmic, mechanical motion. Hi, Mom, I said. Look at you, she said, pulling back but keeping her hands on my shoulders, pinning me in place. You look expensive. Doesn't she look expensive, Ron? My father appeared from the living room. He was wearing a sweater that I recognized immediately. I had bought it for him 4 years ago. It was slightly frayed at the cuffs. He held a glass of eggnog, his eyes scanning me not with paternal affection, but with a calculating assessment. Good to see you, kid, he said. Flight was okay? No delays? Business class? I bet. It was fine. Dad, I said. Then came Harper. She descended the stairs like she was making an entrance at a gala, dressed in a red velvet dress that was entirely inappropriate for a Tuesday afternoon at home. She looked glossy and manicured, but there was a tightness around her eyes that the makeup couldn't hide. Maddie, she squealed, bypassing the handshake I offered and throwing her arms around my neck. She smelled of vanilla perfume and white wine. God, I missed you. I was just telling Logan. I said, it doesn't feel like Christmas until Madison is here. She pulled back and stroked my hair, her fingers lingering near my ear. It was an intimate gesture, possessive and strange. Your hair is so chic. I bet that cut cost $300. You have to take me to your stylist in Seattle sometime. We moved into the living room. The dynamic had shifted since the birthday party. Back then, they were dismissive. Now, they were attentive to the point of predation. They laughed too hard at my comment about the airport traffic. They nodded too eagerly when I mentioned the weather. It was a play, and they were all overacting. I looked toward the kitchen. The plastic sheet rippled in the draft. So, I said, gesturing to the construction zone, how is the remodel going? The room went silent for a beat. Ron took a long sip of his eggnog. Harper picked a piece of lint off her velvet dress. Oh, you know contractors, Denise said, her voice pitching up into a nervous trill. Always delays. We decided to pause it for the holidays. We didn't want the noise while you were here. We wanted it to be peaceful. It was a lie. I knew it was a lie because Grandma Evelyn had told me the contractor walked off the job due to non-payment, but I nodded. That was thoughtful, I said. Thank you. Dinner was a masterclass in tension. We sat at the dining table, the fine china laid out, the roast beef was overcooked, but everyone ate it with exaggerated gusto. Logan, who had arrived late looking harassed and smelling of cigarette smoke, sat next to Harper. He kept refilling my wine glass. "So, Madison," Ron said, sawing at his meat. "I saw on the news that cyber attacks are up. Big business, right? Your company must be raking it in." "We are busy," I said. "That's good. Security is important," he said, nodding solemnly. "A man needs to feel secure, needs to know his assets are safe. You know, I was looking at my portfolio the other day." "Dad," Harper interrupted, placing a hand on his arm. "Not at the table. Let's just enjoy having Madison home." She smiled at me. It was a terrifying smile. It was the smile of a conspirator. "See?" it said. "I am protecting you. I am on your side." After the main course, we moved to the gift exchange. Usually, we did this on Christmas morning, but Denise insisted we do it tonight. "Since we are all together," she said, "why wait?" The real reason, I suspected, was that they couldn't wait to see what I had brought. I had decided to play my part to the bitter end. I wanted to see if there was any hesitation, any moment of shame. I handed a small, wrapped box to Ron. He tore it open. It was a watch, a Tag Heuer. It retailed for $2,500. He stared at it. His mouth opened slightly. He didn't look at me. He looked at the watch face. "Wow," he breathed. "Now this is a timepiece." He put it on immediately, turning his wrist to catch the light. He didn't say thank you. He said, "Fits perfect." I gave Harper a box containing a designer handbag she had pinned on her Pinterest board 3 months ago. It was leather, Italian, and cost more than her mortgage payment. She screamed. She actually screamed. "Oh my God! The structure! The hardware!" She draped it over her shoulder and posed for Logan. "Look, babe, doesn't it elevate the outfit?" "Looks great," Logan said, eyeing the bag like he was estimating its resale value on eBay. I gave Denise a silk scarf and a gift card to a high-end spa, loaded with $1,000. She pressed the card to her chest. "Oh, Madison, you spoil us. You really do." They took it all. They didn't ask if I could afford it. They didn't protest. They didn't say, "This is too much." They absorbed my generosity as if it were oxygen, as if they were entitled to it simply because they shared my DNA. I sat there, clutching the pair of fuzzy socks they had given me, and felt the final tumblers of the lock click into place. Grandma Evelyn was right. They didn't see me. They saw a delivery system for the things they felt they deserved. "Well," Denise said, clapping her hands together once the wrapping paper had been cleared away. "That was wonderful. But the night is young. Let's have some coffee in the living room. Just family. We have some things to catch up on." The air pressure in the room dropped. This was it. The ambush. We migrated to the living room. The fire was crackling, but it offered no warmth. Denise gestured for me to sit in the armchair, the guest of honor spot. Ron stood by the fireplace, leaning his arm on the mantel in a pose that looked rehearsed. Harper and Logan sat on the sofa. Holding hands, Denise perched on the ottoman, completing the circle. It looked like an intervention, or a shakedown. "Madison," Denise started, her voice dropping to a serious, confidential tone. "We are just so happy you are home, seeing you do so well. It brings us a lot of peace. But you know, a family is like a chain. If one link is struggling, the whole chain feels it." She paused, waiting for me to nod. I didn't nod. I stared at her, my face a mask of polite disinterest. "Your father and I," she continued, glancing at Ron, "we have been looking at the numbers. Retirement is coming up, and with the house needing so much work, and Harper trying to get her business off the ground so she can contribute, we were thinking," Ron cut in, unable to handle the preamble, "that maybe we could structure something, a family trust, maybe where you contribute a percentage, tax deductible of course, And we manage the distribution for the family needs. Keeps it all in-house. It would be an investment, Harper added quickly, leaning forward. You would be investing in us, in your family legacy. A family trust, managed by them, funded by me. It was so audacious I almost admired the creativity. I looked at them. I looked at the watch on my father's wrist. I looked at the bag sitting at Harper's feet. I looked at the desperation barely concealed behind their eyes. Is that what we are doing? I asked softly. We are just discussing options, Logan said smoothly. Financial planning is smart. Madison. I stood up. The movement was sudden enough that Denise flinched. I heard about the barbecue, I said. The room went still. The crackle of the fire sounded like gunshots. The barbecue? Denise asked, her smile faltering. Which barbecue? Honey, we have so many. The one after I left last time, I said. I didn't raise my voice. I kept it level, professional. The one where you sat on the patio and toasted to the fact that I was finally useful. I looked at Harper. Her face drained of color, leaving 2 patches of rouge standing out starkly on her cheeks. And you, I said to her. You said, she thinks we really care. Harper opened her mouth, then closed it. She looked at Logan, panic flaring in her eyes. Now, Madison, Denise stood up, her hands fluttering. You are misunderstanding. You know how gossip is. Whoever told you that? They are trying to stir up trouble. Probably Aunt Linda, right? She has always been jealous. It wasn't Aunt Linda, I said. It was a joke, Harper blurted out. God, Madison, you have always been so sensitive. We were just venting. It didn't mean anything. That is just how families talk. We roast each other. It is a sign of affection. Affection, I repeated the word. It tasted like ash. Yes, Denise insisted. We love you. Madison, look at this Christmas. Look at how we welcomed you. Doesn't that count for anything? It counts, I said. It counts as a transaction. You performed affection, and I paid for it with a watch and a handbag. We are even. Now listen here, Ron growled, finally stepping away from the mantel. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He was staring intently at the television, which was playing a muted commercial for car insurance. You can't come into this house and start accusing people. We are your parents. We raised you. You owe us a little respect. I owe you nothing, I said. I paid my debts. I paid for the truck. I paid for the kitchen demolition. I paid for the medical bills. I paid for the silence. You are being hysterical, Logan said, his voice cold. Sit down. Madison, let's talk about the trust. There is no trust, I said. In any sense of the word, I walked toward the hallway. Where are you going? Denise shrieked. The facade was gone now. Her face was twisted, ugly with fear and entitlement. It is Christmas week. You can't just leave. What will people say? Tell them I was background noise, I said, grabbing my coat from the rack. Tell them you couldn't hear me over the sound of your own voices. If you walk out that door, Harper yelled, standing up. Don't expect us to come crawling back. You need us. Madison, you are alone. You have no one but us. I paused with my hand on the doorknob. The cold brass felt grounding against my palm. I am alone, I said, turning back to look at them one last time. They looked small. They looked messy. They looked like a bad investment I should have written off years ago. But for the first time in my life, I am not lonely. I am done, I said. I opened the door and stepped out into the night. The cold air hit me like a slap, sharp and cleansing. The snow had started to fall, dusting the world in white silence. I walked down the driveway, my boots crunching on the gravel. I didn't look back at the house. I didn't look back at the warm glow of the windows where the perfect family was likely screaming at each other. I reached the bottom of the driveway where my rental car was parked, but I wasn't alone. Sitting on the porch swing of the small guest cottage next door, wrapped in a thick wool blanket, was Grandma Evelyn. She was watching me. The tip of her cane rested on the frozen ground. I stopped. "You didn't stay for coffee," she said, her voice carrying clearly in the stillness. "I don't drink coffee at night," I said. "It keeps me awake." "Good girl," she said. She didn't smile, but her eyes were kind. "Go. Drive fast. The roads are going to freeze." "I will," I said. "Goodbye, Grandma." "See you soon, child," she whispered. I got into the car. My hands were shaking, not from cold, but from the adrenaline dump of finally severing the limb. I started the engine. The dashboard lit up, casting a blue glow over the interior. My phone, sitting in the cup holder, buzzed. I glanced at it, expecting a barrage of texts from Harper or Denise. I expected guilt trips, threats, apologies, but it wasn't a text message. It was an email notification. I picked up the phone. The subject line made me frown. Subject: "Welcome to the team. Partnership confirmation." I tapped it open. It wasn't from Aegis Harbor. It wasn't from any vendor I worked with. "Dear Ms. Cook, congratulations on finalizing the registration of your new limited liability company. We are thrilled to welcome Cook Pierce Security Partners to our network of verified service providers. Your profile is now live, and your deposit has been processed. Cook Pierce, my last name, and Logan's last name. I hadn't registered an LLC. I hadn't made a deposit. I stared at the screen, the snowflakes melting against the windshield outside. The email address the confirmation was sent to was mine, but it was an old alias, one I hadn't used in years, one my family knew. I looked up at the house. The lights in the living room were still on. Harper hadn't just wanted my money. She hadn't just wanted a silent partner. She had decided to become me. I put the car in gear and drove away, the tires spinning slightly on the ice. I wasn't just leaving a toxic family anymore. I was driving into a crime scene, and the victim was my own name. The rain in Seattle was different from the snow in Missouri. It was relentless, gray, and isolating, washing the city in a perpetual twilight that usually made me feel safe. I had returned to my apartment, to my fortress of glass and steel overlooking the bay, believing that I had left the chaos 2,000 miles behind me. I had cut the cord. I had walked out into the snow and driven away. I thought the silence that followed was the sound of victory. I was wrong. The silence was simply the sound of them reloading. It started on a Thursday morning, 3 days after I returned. I was sitting at my kitchen island, nursing a cup of black coffee and reviewing a threat assessment report for a pharmaceutical client. My phone buzzed. It was a number I did not recognize, but the area code was local to Seattle. I assumed it was a delivery driver, or perhaps the concierge. "This is Madison," I answered, my voice professional and clipped. "Good morning, Ms. Cook. This is David Chen from Executive Search Partners," a voice chirped on the other end. It was the overly caffeinated, aggressive tone of a high-level recruiter. "I just wanted to reach out and say congratulations. I saw the announcement on LinkedIn and the industry press release. It is a bold move," I frowned, putting my coffee cup down. "I am sorry. David, I think you have the wrong information. I haven't made any moves. I am still a senior consultant at Aegis Harbor." David laughed, a sound that grated against my ear like sandpaper. "Oh, come on, Madison, you don't have to be modest with me. I saw the launch of the new firm, Cook Pierce Security Partners, founding partner and chief strategy officer. It is all over the regional feeds. I was just calling to see if you were looking to fill any junior analyst roles. I have some great candidates." My blood ran cold. The temperature in my apartment seemed to drop 10 degrees in a second. "Cook Pierce," I repeated, the name tasting like bile in my mouth. "Yeah, great branding. By the way, security is a family promise. Love that tagline. Very trustworthy. Anyway, are you hiring?" "I have to go," I said. I hung up. My hands were trembling, not with fear, but with a sudden, violent realization. I opened my laptop. I typed the name into the search bar. Cook Pierce Security Partners. There it was, the first result. a sponsored ad. I clicked the link. The website was slick. It was professional. It was better designed than the website of the actual firm I worked for. It used a color palette of navy blue and gold, colors that signaled authority and wealth. And there, on the landing page, was a high-resolution photo of me. It was a headshot I had taken for a keynote speech 2 years ago. I looked confident, capable, and serious. Beneath my face, in bold, sans serif font, were the words, Madison Cook, founding partner, chief security architect. I scrolled down, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The website was a masterpiece of fabrication. It listed services, enterprise risk management, high net worth asset protection, digital forensics. Then I clicked on the About Us page. It was a hallucination. It had to be. Meet the team. There was my photo again, and next to it, a photo of Logan. He was wearing a suit I had never seen him wear, looking sternly at a computer screen that was clearly turned off. His title? Logan Pierce, Director of Operations, and Harper, my sister, the homecoming queen who couldn't configure a Wi-Fi router. Her photo was soft focus, approachable. Her title, Harper Cook Pierce, Client Relations, Lifestyle Security Lead. The text below my bio was the worst part. It wasn't just lies. It was plagiarism. They had copied my actual bio from the Aegis Harbor website, but they had embellished it. They claimed I had 20 years of experience. They claimed I had worked for agencies whose names you are not supposed to say out loud. And then, a quote, a pull quote in italics, attributed to me. At Cook Pierce, we don't just protect your data, we protect your legacy, because family is the only asset that matters. Madison Cook. I felt sick, physically sick. It wasn't just identity theft, it was identity cannibalism. They hadn't just stolen my credit card. They had skinned me and were wearing my professional reputation like a costume to a masquerade ball. I looked at the contact number at the bottom of the page. It was a generic 1800 number, likely routed to a cell phone. I picked up my phone. My fingers felt numb as I dialed. It rang twice. Thank you for calling Cook Pierce Security Partners, a voice answered. It was a man's voice, deepening itself, trying to sound authoritative. This is the Director of Operations speaking. How may we secure your world today? It was Logan. He sounded like a child playing dress-up in his father's office. Logan, I said. There was a silence on the other end. A long, heavy silence. Then a shuffling sound, like a phone being juggled. Madison? His voice cracked, losing the baritone affectation instantly. Hey, we weren't expecting. I thought you were in a meeting. Take it down, I said. My voice was a whisper, but it was the kind of whisper that cuts through steel. Take the website down, right now. Now, hold on, Logan said, his voice shifting into a frantic, sales pitch cadence. Listen, Madison, don't overreact. We are just doing a soft launch. It is a proof of concept. We needed a face for the brand. And let's be honest, you are the heavy hitter. We are just borrowing your credibility for the startup phase. It is standard business practice. It is fraud, I said. You are impersonating a security professional. You are using my name to sell services you cannot provide. Do you have any idea what happens if a client actually hires you? That is the genius part, Logan said, sounding disturbingly proud. If we get a contract, we just outsource the work. We find some freelancers in India or wherever. We take a management fee, and everyone wins. We are building an agency. Madison, we are being entrepreneurs. Isn't that what you always wanted for us? To be successful? I am calling my lawyer, I said. Wait, don't be like that, Logan yelled. Harper, get on the line. She's freaking out. There was a fumble, and then my sister's voice came on the line. She was crying. Of course she was crying. Maddie, please, she sobbed. You don't understand. We are drowning. The house, the bank sent a notice, and the business loan for my curation thing. We got denied. We didn't have a choice. You always have a choice, I said. You chose to commit a felony. We are doing this for the family, she shrieked. Why are you so selfish? You have everything. You have the career, the money, the view. All we wanted was a little piece of that shine. We just wanted to look like we mattered. People respect you. Madison, if they think we are with you, they will respect us too. Why can't you just let us have this? It doesn't cost you anything. It costs me my name, I said. It costs me the one thing I built without you. We are partners, she wailed. Look at the name. Cook Pierce. It is us together. Like it should have been. I realized then that they truly didn't understand. They weren't criminals in the traditional sense. They were narcissists who viewed my existence as a natural resource they were entitled to mine. They didn't see my career as a result of hard work. They saw it as a magical cloak I had found, and they simply wanted to wear it for a while. You have 1 hour, I said. 1 hour to take the site offline, or I burn it down. I hung up. I didn't wait an hour. I called my lawyer, a woman named Sarah, who was as warm as liquid nitrogen and twice as effective. It is bad, I told her, sending her the link. It is worse than bad, Sarah said, typing furiously in the background. Madison, I am looking at the domain registry. They didn't just build a site. They have a payment portal active. I am seeing traffic. They are taking deposits. Deposits for what? Consultations, risk assessments, $500 a pop, $2,000 for a full audit. They are collecting money for services they are not qualified to render. Send the cease and desist, I said, and prepare a filing for identity theft. I am sending it now, Sarah said. But Madison, if they have taken money, this isn't just civil anymore. If a client realizes they have been scammed and they see your face on the website, the liability lands on you first. You need to get ahead of this. You need to disavow them publicly. Do it, I said. Draft the statement. I spent the next 4 hours in a state of suspended animation. I paced my apartment. I watched the rain hit the glass. I refreshed the website every 10 minutes. 40 minutes after the call, the website went dark. A under maintenance banner appeared. I received a text from Harper. Harper, you happy now? You just ruined our one chance. I hope you rot in that glass tower. Don't ever talk to us again. I blocked the number. I blocked Logan. I blocked Denise and Ron. I blocked Aunt Linda. I severed every digital limb connecting me to the body that was trying to kill me. I thought it was over. I thought the under maintenance sign was the end of the chapter. But the internet never forgets, and fraud has a blast radius. At 6 p.m, as the city lights were flickering to life against the dark water of the bay, my laptop pinged with a high-priority email notification. It wasn't from Sarah. It wasn't from Aegis Harbor. The sender address ended in .gov. It was from the Washington State Department of Licensing, Private Security Guard and Inquiry Services. I opened it, my breath catching in my throat. Subject: Notice of Complaint. Case number 49204. Dear Ms. Cook, this office has received a formal consumer complaint regarding unlicensed activity and fraudulent misrepresentation of services regarding your registered entity, Cook Pierce Security Partners. The complainant alleges that on December 22nd, they paid a retainer of $5,000 for an emergency security audit for a small medical practice. Based on the credentials presented on your website, no services were rendered, and the contact number provided has been disconnected. Please be advised that impersonating a licensed private investigator or security consultant is a Class C felony under state law. You are hereby ordered to respond to these allegations within 48 hours. I stared at the screen. December 22nd. That was the day I was in Missouri. That was the day I bought my father a watch. That was the day I gave Harper a handbag. They hadn't just started this when I left. They had been running the scam while I was sitting at their dinner table. They had been using the money they stole from strangers, using my face, to buy the roast beef I ate. They hadn't just borrowed my name, they had sold it, and they had pocketed the cash. And now, The state of Washington wasn't looking for Logan or Harper. They were looking for the founding partner. They were looking for me. The conference room at my attorney's office was cold, sterile, and smelled faintly of expensive coffee and ozone. It was the kind of room designed for mergers, acquisitions, and the quiet dismantling of empires. Today, it was the operating theater where Sarah, my lawyer, was dissecting my life. On the mahogany table, the evidence was fanned out like a losing hand of poker. There were printouts of the fraudulent website, bank transfer records obtained through emergency discovery, and a thick stack of papers from the Washington State Department of Licensing. "It is worse than we thought. Madison," Sarah said. She didn't look up from her laptop. Her fingers were flying across the keyboard, executing a legal blockade. They didn't just put up a website. They incorporated. They filed articles of organization for Cook Pierce Security Partners, LLC in Missouri, listing you as the primary stakeholder without your signature. They forged a digital signature. It is sloppy, but it was enough to fool the automated system. I sat perfectly still, my hands clasped on the table. How? "They had your social security number," Sarah said, her voice flat. "Likely from old tax returns at your parents' house? Or maybe you co-signed a student loan for Harper years ago?" "I co-signed for her car, 10 years ago," I whispered. "That would do it," Sarah said. "They used your identity to open a business bank account at a regional credit union. Then they linked it to a merchant services processor so they could take credit card payments online. They created a LinkedIn page. They created a Facebook business page. They even created a fake Better Business Bureau profile, although that one is currently pending review." I felt a wave of nausea, but I swallowed it down. "Shut it down. All of it." "I am trying," Sarah said, "but the internet is like a hydra. You cut off one head, and the cache remains. We have sent takedown notices to the host, the domain registrar, and the bank, but the damage isn't just digital anymore, it is financial." I spent the next 3 hours doing the administrative equivalent of burning my own house down to save the foundation. I froze my credit with all 3 bureaus. I called my bank and had them flag every account for high-level fraud monitoring. I changed my phone number, a number I had held for 12 years. I changed every password, from my email to my retirement accounts, using a random generator that created strings of chaos I would never remember. It felt like I was boarding up windows in anticipation of a hurricane, but the storm was already inside the house. "Here is the detail that bothers me," Sarah said, sliding a piece of paper across the table. "The registered agent address for the LLC." I looked at the address. 429 Main Street, Suite B, St. Charles, Missouri. "I know this address," I said. The realization hit me with the dull thud of a sandbag. "It isn't an office. It is the print and ship center next to the Dairy Queen where my mother buys her lottery tickets." "They rented a mailbox," Sarah confirmed. "Suite B is just a box on a wall." It was so small, so tawdry. My high-flying, international security firm was being run out of a strip mall mailbox between a fast food joint and a dry cleaner. It was pathetic, but it was also incredibly dangerous. It meant every legal notice, every complaint, every angry letter from a scammed client was going to a metal box that my mother probably checked on her way to get a blizzard. "We received a response from Logan," Sarah said, checking her email. Or rather, from an email address attributed to Logan. "What does he say?" "He is claiming plausible deniability. He says they hired a third-party marketing consultant, a friend of a friend, who set up the website and wrote the copy. He claims they didn't know the consultant used your specific credentials or claimed you were a partner. He says it was a miscommunication regarding the branding." "He is lying," I said. "Logan doesn't have marketing friends. Logan has drinking buddies." "I know he's lying," Sarah said, "because we subpoenaed the IP logs from the website host as part of the emergency injunction. The edits to the About Us page, specifically the section praising your visionary leadership, were made from a residential IP address." She turned the laptop screen toward me. The IP resolves to a residential internet account registered to Ron and Denise Cook. I stared at the screen. Harper? The edits were made at 2 in the morning, Sarah said. The metadata on the uploaded photos of you? It shows they were cropped and filtered using an iPhone registered to Harper's iPhone. And the text. Madison, look at the language. I read the copy again. Madison Cook has always believed that safety starts at the dinner table. She built this firm on the principles of loyalty, generosity, and the unbreakable bond of family trust. It wasn't marketing copy. It was a weaponized version of the guilt trip she had been laying on me for years. It was Harper's voice, stripped of the whining and dressed up in corporate buzzwords. She hadn't just stolen my identity, she had rewritten my motivations to align with her fantasy. She wrote me as the sister she wanted, the one who existed solely to serve the family legacy. She wrote it, I said, my voice shaking with a rage so cold it burned. She wrote it while I was sleeping in the guest room. She was probably downstairs, eating my leftovers, typing this out. The phone on the conference table buzzed. It was patched through from Sarah's receptionist. Ms. Cook? I have a doctor, Aris, on the line. He is the complainant from the Washington State filing. He insists on speaking with you before he calls the police. Sarah looked at me. She shook her head slightly. Don't do it. Her eyes said, liability. I reached out and pressed the speaker button. This is Madison Cook. Ms. Cook? The voice on the other end was trembling. It was the voice of a man who was scared and trying very hard to be angry. Or should I say, the founding partner. Doctor. Aris, I said, keeping my voice steady. I want you to listen to me very carefully. I did not authorize that website. I did not authorize the use of my name. I am a victim of identity theft, just as you are. Identity theft? He laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. Lady, I spoke to your director of operations, Logan. He knew your whole resume. He told me about your work with the Midwest Hospital Network. He said, my sister-in-law Madison is the best in the business. She is just flying back to Seattle, but she will review your audit personally. I closed my eyes. Logan, he had name-dropped my real clients. He had used the information I gave them at the dinner table, the information I shared to prove I was successful, as bait to hook a victim. He sounded nice. Doctor, Aris continued, his voice breaking. He sounded like a family man. He talked about his wife's business. He said, we are a family operation. We don't price gouge like the big firms. I run a small practice, Ms. Cook. $5,000 is a lot of money for me. I sent that retainer because I thought, who scams people with their own family? I thought if his sister is the expert, he must be legit. Who scams people with their own family? The question hung in the air, heavy and unanswerable. Dr. Aris, I said, you will get your money back. I promise you. How? He asked. The number is disconnected. The email bounced. I will personally ensure you are reimbursed, I said. Sarah frantically waved her hands, mouthing, no, do not admit liability, but I ignored her. And then, I am going to help you file the police report. I ended the call. Sarah exhaled a long breath. Madison, you cannot just pay him. If you pay him, it looks like hush money. It looks like an admission of guilt. It ties you to the fraud. I am not paying him to shut him up, I said. I am paying him because my brother-in-law stole his money using my face. I will draft a settlement agreement explicitly stating I am not liable, but I am reimbursing him as a gesture of goodwill due to the fraud committed by a third party. That is a fine line, Sarah warned. Walk it, I said. My phone vibrated in my pocket. It was Grandma Evelyn. I hesitated. I didn't want to answer. I didn't want to bring the mud into her clean, quiet world. But if I didn't answer, she might call the house. She might call Denise. Hi, Grandma, I answered. They are screaming, Evelyn said immediately. I can hear them from my porch. Denise is crying. Ron is yelling at Logan. Something about a lawyer letter? I sent a cease and desist, I said, and a notice of intent to file for fraud. Good, Evelyn said. Her voice was fierce. Burn it down, Madison. Grandma, you need to stay inside, I said. Don't go over there. Don't let them drag you into this. I am going over there, she said. I am going to tell them exactly what I think of them. I am going to tell Denise that she raised a pack of wolves. No, I said, sharper than I intended. No, Grandma, please, if you go over there, they will turn on you. They will blame you. They will say you poisoned me against them. I can't have you in the crossfire. Please, just stay on your porch. Watch the show if you want. But don't get on the stage. There was a pause. They are saying terrible things about you. Madison, they are saying you are trying to put Harper in jail. I am trying to keep myself out of jail, I said. Grandma, promise me, stay away from them. All right, she sighed, but I am keeping my door locked, and I am not answering the phone when Denise calls to borrow sugar. I hung up. Sarah was looking at me with a mixture of sympathy and professional detachedness. She slid a folder across the table. We have to make a decision. Madison, the Department of Licensing needs a response within 48 hours. Doctor, Aris is holding off on the police report for now, but there might be others. We found traces of 3 other consultations booked through the site. What are the options? Option A, Sarah said. We treat this as a civil misunderstanding. We refund everyone quietly. We force Harper and Logan to sign a strict NDA and a dissolution agreement. You absorb the financial hit. You save the family reputation, but you stay tethered to them, and you risk your security clearance if this ever leaks. Option B? Option B? Sarah straightened her spine. We go nuclear. We file a police report with the St. Charles Police Department for identity theft and wire fraud. We submit a sworn affidavit to the Department of Licensing naming Harper and Logan as the sole perpetrators. We apply for a restraining order. This clears your name completely. It protects your license. It protects your career. But it means your sister and your brother-in-law will likely be arrested. Wire fraud across state lines is a federal offense. They could go to prison. And your parents, they will be collateral damage. The room was silent. I looked at the rain streaking the window. I thought about the watch on my father's wrist. I thought about the handbag. I thought about the look on Harper's face when she said, "We are partners." She didn't want a partner. She wanted a scapegoat. If the business failed, it was my name on the license. If the client sued, it was my face on the website. She had set me up to be the shield while she played at being the sword. They didn't just steal my money, I said softly. They tried to steal my life. They tried to wear my skin. Yes, Sarah said. They did. File the report, I said. Option B, Sarah nodded. I will draft the affidavit. I went home that night feeling lighter and heavier at the same time. I had pulled the trigger. The bullet was in the air. It was just a matter of time before it hit. I walked into my apartment building. The doorman handed me a stack of mail. Most of it was bills, junk, but at the bottom of the stack was a thick cream-colored envelope. There was no return address, but I knew the handwriting. It was loopy, decorative, filled with unnecessary flourishes. It was the handwriting that had signed my report cards. It was the handwriting that had labeled the leftovers in the fridge. It was from my mother. She must have mailed it the day I left, before the lawyers got involved, before the website went dark. It was a letter from the past, arriving to haunt the present. I took the elevator up to the penthouse. I didn't open the letter until I had poured myself a glass of water and sat down by the window. I tore open the envelope. It wasn't a card. It was a single sheet of lined notebook paper, torn from a spiral notebook. Madison, I am writing this because I don't think you heard us. You were always like that, even as a baby. You only hear what you want to hear. We are disappointed, not because you left, but because of how you left. You made your sister cry. You made your father feel small. You think because you have money, you are better than us? You think you can just come here, throw gifts at us, and then judge how we live? Harper is trying so hard. She has a vision. She just needed a name to help her start. Families share names. Madison, that is what families do. We share burdens. We share success. Why is your name so precious that you can't let your sister use it to feed her family? You have so much. She has so little. It is selfish. It is ugly. If you try to stop this, if you try to hurt her business, you need to know something. You won't just be hurting a business. You will be killing this family, and I will never forgive you. You are destroying the family. Madison, fix it. Send the money. Let her use the name. Or don't bother coming back when I die. Mom, I stared at the letter. The ink was blue. The pressure of the pen was hard, indenting the paper. Families share names. She truly believed it. She believed that my identity was community property. She believed that my hard work was a communal asset to be harvested by the member who needed it most. I looked at the date on the letter. December 21st. She wrote this while I was still there. She wrote this while she was hugging me and thanking me for the spa gift card. I folded the letter. I didn't tear it up. I didn't burn it. I put it in the folder marked Evidence. You are right, Mom, I whispered to the empty room. I am destroying the family. I am destroying the parasite that is eating it. I picked up my phone and called Sarah. Add the letter to the file, I said. It proves they knew exactly what they were doing. It proves the intent was to exploit. Are you sure? Sarah asked. It is your mother. No, I said. It is an accomplice. Revenge is often depicted as a loud, chaotic event involving screaming matches and thrown vases, in my experience with high-level corporate security. However, true retaliation is silent, bureaucratic, and absolutely devastating. It is not a scream. It is a document. I did not go on Facebook to defend myself. I did not post a tearful video explaining my side of the story. I went silent. While Harper was likely expecting a social media war, a battlefield she knew how to navigate, I moved the conflict to a terrain she couldn't even comprehend: the legal system. The first step was the litigation hold. My lawyer, Sarah, issued a preservation letter to Harper, Logan, and my parents. It was a formal legal notice informing them that litigation was reasonably anticipated and that they were legally obligated to preserve all relevant information. This meant every email, every text message, every draft of the website, and every bank record. If they deleted anything after receiving that letter, it wouldn't just be fraud. It would be spoliation of evidence. It froze them in place. They couldn't scrub the servers. They couldn't wipe the hard drives. They were trapped in a room with their own sins. Next, I had to face the music at my actual job. I scheduled a meeting with the Vice President of Risk at Aegis Harbor Security. Walking into that office was the hardest thing I had done in years. I had to lay out the entire embarrassing saga. I had to explain that my family had stolen my professional identity to scam a dentist and a few small business owners. I expected to be fired. Instead, the VP looked at the dossier I had compiled, the police report draft, the cease and desist, the affidavit disavowing the firm, and nodded. You are a victim here, Madison, he said, his voice grave. But you represent Aegis. We need to control the narrative before a client Googles you and finds that garbage website. We will issue an internal memo clarifying that you have no outside partnerships, and our legal team will assist with the domain takedown to ensure it is done correctly. We want that site scrubbed from the Wayback Machine, not just the live web. It was a reprieve, but it came with a look that said, fix this, or you are a liability. With my flank secured at work, I turned my attention back to St. Louis. I didn't want to just sue them. I wanted them to admit it. I wanted a confession on the record. I instructed Sarah to schedule a mediation session. We didn't call it a deposition. We called it a family resolution meeting. We framed it as a chance to settle things before law enforcement got fully involved. We booked a conference room at a neutral law office in downtown St. Louis, far away from the emotional triggers of my parents' house. I flew in on a red-eye flight, arriving on a Tuesday morning. The sky was a bruised purple, threatening more snow. I wore a suit that was sharper than a scalpel. When I walked into the conference room, they were already there. The room was beige and windowless, the air stale. Harper sat on one side of the long mahogany table, wearing a cardigan that was too big for her, pulling at the sleeves. She looked small. Logan sat next to her, tapping his foot nervously against the carpet. Ron was staring at a painting of a sailboat on the wall, his jaw set in a hard line. Denise was not there. She had claimed a migraine, a convenient retreat from reality, but they weren't alone. I had brought Sarah. And in the corner, a court reporter sat with a stenography machine, ready to transcribe every word. "What is this?" Logan asked. Eyeing the reporter, "You said we were just going to talk. Why is she here?" "She is here to ensure we don't have any misunderstandings," I said, taking my seat at the head of the table. "Everything said in this room is on the record." "Come on, Maddie," Harper said, trying to summon that old sisterly warmth. Her voice cracked. "We don't need all this. We are family. Can't we just figure this out? We can pay the dentist back. We can fix it." "It isn't just the dentist," Sarah said. She opened a file folder. "We have records of 3 other deposits, a total of $11,500 collected in less than 10 days, and we have the emails between you and the web developer where you specifically asked to. And I quote, 'Make it look like Madison is running the show so we can charge premium rates.'" Harper flinched. "I didn't mean it like that." "Then how did you mean it?" I asked. My voice was soft, devoid of anger. I was just asking for data. "We needed the money," Harper exploded. The mask slipped, revealing the raw entitlement underneath. "You don't understand. The balloon payment on the mortgage is due in February. If we don't pay it, we lose the house. We lose everything. And you? You are sitting there with your penthouse and your first-class flights, and you wouldn't even invest $40,000 to help your own sister start a business." "So you stole my identity?" I asked. "I borrowed it," she screamed. "I was going to pay you back. Once the agency took off, we were going to cut you in. We were doing you a favor. Really, expanding your brand." "By committing wire fraud?" Sarah interjected calmly. "It is not fraud if we intended to deliver the service," Logan argued. Leaning forward, he was sweating. "Look, Madison, I know this looks bad, but we can work a deal. I can sign a promissory note. We will pay you back the $11,000, plus interest. Just tell the lawyers to back off. Tell the state licensing board it was a clerical error." "You want me to lie to the government?" I asked. "I want you to save your family from going to jail," Logan hissed. "Do you have any idea what a felony record does to an insurance license? I will be unhireable. We will be destitute. Is that what you want? You want to see your niece and nephew on the street?" It was the ultimate leverage. The children. They were using their own kids as human shields. I looked at Logan. I looked at the sweat beading on his upper lip. "I don't want anyone on the street, Logan, but I cannot buy your reputation back. You sold it for $11,000. "We can pay you," Logan insisted. "I have a buddy who can lend me the cash. We will give you $15,000. Just sign a non-disclosure agreement. Walk away." He thought it was about the money. He still thought everything was about the money. "I don't want your money," I said. "I want the truth. I want you to admit, right now, for the record, that you created the site without my permission and that I had no knowledge of the operation. If we admit that, we are admitting to a crime," Logan said. "You already committed the crime," I said. "Now you are just deciding if you want to be cooperative suspects or hostile ones." The room fell silent. The only sound was the soft click, click, click of the stenographer's machine. Then, Ron spoke. My father turned away from the painting of the sailboat. His eyes were red-rimmed. He looked older than I had ever seen him. "We thought you were too busy," he mumbled. "What?" I asked. We thought you were too busy to notice, Ron said, his voice rising with a strange mixture of shame and resentment. You never check in. You never call. We thought we could run it for 6 months, make some real money, get the house fixed, and then shut it down before you ever Googled yourself. We thought you wouldn't find out so fast. There it was, the confession. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a calculated gamble based on their perception of my neglect. They had bet on my distance. They had bet that I was so disconnected from them that they could rob me in plain sight. Thank you, Ron, Sarah said. She looked at the court reporter. Did you get that? The reporter nodded. Harper looked at her father, horrified. Dad, shut up. It is over. Harper, Ron said, slumping in his chair. She has us. She has all of us. I stood up. I felt no triumph. I felt only a profound, exhausting hollowness. I had the confession. I had the leverage to clear my name with the state. I had protected my career, but I had lost the last shred of illusion that these people were my family. The terms are simple, Sarah said, sliding a document across the table. You will shut down the LLC. You will refund every client immediately. You will sign this affidavit admitting sole liability, and you will never, ever use Madison's name or likeness for commercial purposes again. If you violate this, we will forward the entire file to the district attorney. And if we sign? Logan asked, looking at the paper as if it were a death warrant. Then Madison will not press charges personally, Sarah said. We cannot stop the state from investigating, but we won't help them unless subpoenaed. I walked to the door. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't look back. Maddie, Harper called out. Her voice was thin, desperate. You can't just leave. What are we going to do for Christmas? Mom has the roast. I kept walking. The elevator doors closed, shutting out the sound of her voice. I went straight to the airport. I didn't visit Grandma Evelyn. I didn't want to risk running into Denise. I texted Grandma from the gate. It is done. I am going home. I love you. I landed in Seattle 4 hours later. The rain was still falling. It felt like I had been gone for a year. I was in a taxi, crossing the bridge, when my phone rang. It was Aunt Linda. I almost didn't answer, but something in the relentless buzzing made me pick up. Madison? Aunt Linda's voice was high, panicked. You need to answer. It is your grandmother. My heart stopped. What happened? She collapsed, Linda said. About an hour ago. The ambulance just took her. Denise called me screaming. She said Evelyn was arguing with Ron on the porch. She was yelling at him about what they did to you, and then she just grabbed her chest and went down. Is she alive? I asked, gripping the door handle of the taxi. She is in the ICU. It was a heart attack. Madison. A bad one. I felt the world tilt. Grandma Evelyn, the only one who saw me, the only one who defended me. She had gone to the house. She had broken her promise to stay away because she was trying to protect me. I was about to tell the driver to turn around, to take me back to the airport, when a notification popped up on my phone. It was Instagram. Harper Cook just posted a photo. I clicked it. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. It was a picture of Harper's hand holding Grandma Evelyn's hand. The hospital bracelet was visible. The lighting was dramatic, filtered to black and white. The caption read, "Please pray for our matriarch. Grandma Evelyn is fighting for her life tonight. Her heart just couldn't take the stress of a broken family. It is devastating what happens when people put money and pride above the ones who love them. We are here holding her hand, picking up the pieces. We forgive those who aren't here. We just want our family back. Prayers for Evelyn family." First, heartbroken. I stared at the screen. She was blaming me. She was using Grandma's heart attack, a heart attack caused by their greed, their fraud, their argument, to paint me as the villain who abandoned the family and caused the stress that killed her. She was spinning the narrative in real time, while our grandmother was lying in a hospital bed. I looked at the comments. Oh my God. Harper, I am so sorry. Sending prayers. Who would do this to an old lady? Stay strong. Harper, you are the rock of that family. I felt a coldness settle over me that was absolute. It wasn't the cold of winter. It was the cold of the morgue. Driver, I said, keep going to Belltown. I wasn't going back to Missouri to cry in a hospital waiting room while Harper live-streamed her grief. I had to save Grandma Evelyn, but I couldn't do it by being present. I had to do it by taking away the audience. I opened my email. I found the draft I had written with the PR team at Aegis. It was time to tell the truth, not in a deposition, but to the world. I returned to St. Louis less than 24 hours after I had left. But the city felt different this time. It was no longer a place of childhood nostalgia or family tension. It was a hostile environment, a battlefield where the casualties were truth and blood pressure. I drove straight from the airport to Mercy Hospital, my luggage still in the trunk of another rental car. The Instagram post Harper had uploaded was burning a hole in my mind, a digital accusation that I was the architect of this tragedy. When I walked into the intensive care unit, the silence was heavy, broken only by the rhythmic beeping of cardiac monitors and the soft hiss of oxygen. I found room 402. Grandma Evelyn looked small. That was the first thing that struck me. In my mind, she had always been a towering figure, a woman of iron spine and sharp tongue. Now, she was a fragile shape beneath a thin white sheet, hooked up to tubes that looked too aggressive for her papery skin. I approached the bed slowly. I was afraid to touch her, afraid that my presence really was the poison Harper claimed it was. Her eyes fluttered open. They were cloudy, drugged, but when they found my face, they sharpened. "You came back," she whispered. Her voice was a dry rattle, like leaves scraping against pavement. "I am so sorry, Grandma," I said, taking her hand. It felt like holding a bundle of twigs. "I shouldn't have left. I should have stopped them sooner. I caused this." She squeezed my fingers. The grip was surprisingly strong. "Stop it," she wheezed. "You didn't cause anything. You exposed it. There is a difference." She took a breath, the oxygen mask fogging up. "Don't you back down. Madison, you hear me? Everyone tells women to keep the peace, to swallow the poison so the family doesn't choke. I did it for 40 years with your grandfather. I watched him make mistakes, and I cleaned them up. I let your mother grow up thinking the world owed her a living." She looked at me with an intensity that pierced through the sedation. "You are the only one standing in the right place. Don't you dare move." The door opened behind us. The air in the room shifted instantly from intimate to performative. "Oh, thank God," a voice sobbed. It was Denise. My mother swept into the room, followed closely by Harper and Ron. They were dressed in what I could only describe as hospital chic, comfortable but performatively somber clothes. Harper was wearing waterproof mascara. I noted she had prepared for the close-up. They rushed to the other side of the bed, effectively walling me off. Denise stroked Evelyn's forehead with a trembling hand. "Mom, we are here," she cooed. "We are all here. Even Madison came back. See? We are a family again." Harper looked across the bed at me. Her eyes were red, but they were dry. There was a challenge in them. She was daring me to cause a scene. She was daring me to bring up the fraud, the website, the police report, right here over our dying grandmother. She knew I wouldn't do it. She knew I had the decency she lacked. "I am glad you made it," Harper whispered, loud enough for the nurse in the corner to hear. "I wasn't sure if you could get time off work. We know how important your career is." The implication was clear. You care more about your job than her life. I didn't take the bait. I looked at the three of them, hovering over Evelyn like vultures circling a wounded animal. And then I realized something. They weren't looking at Evelyn with love. They were looking at her with fear. They were terrified she was going to die. Yes, but not because they would miss her. They were terrified because she was the last safety net. My father's pension was drained. Harper was broke. I had cut off the supply line. Evelyn owned the house on the hill. She owned the land. She had a savings account that was the stuff of family legend. They weren't mourning. They were calculating. "I am not dead yet," Evelyn snapped, her voice cutting through Denise's cooing. "Stop hovering. You are stealing my oxygen." "We just want you to rest." "Mom," Ron said, patting her foot awkwardly, "don't worry about anything. We are handling everything. The house, the bills. We have it under control." "You have nothing under control," Evelyn muttered, closing her eyes. "Get Henderson. I want to see Henderson." The room went rigid. Mr. Henderson was Evelyn's attorney. He had been handling the family estate since before I was born. "Now, Mom," Denise said, her voice pitching up, "you are tired. You can't be worrying about legal things now. Mr. Henderson can wait until you are home." "Get him," Evelyn said. She didn't open her eyes, but her tone was final. "Or I will start pulling these tubes out myself." An hour later, Arthur Henderson arrived. He was a man who looked like he had been carved out of mahogany, stiff, formal, and carrying a leather briefcase that looked older than Harper. He asked the family to leave the room. "No," Evelyn said. She pushed herself up slightly, wincing. "They stay. Madison stays." She pointed a trembling finger at me. "Especially Madison." We stood in a semicircle around the bed. The tension was so thick it felt like the air pressure before a tornado. Harper was twisting a ring on her finger. Ron was staring at the floor. "Mr. Henderson," Evelyn said, her voice gaining strength from sheer will. "I need to make an adjustment to the estate plan. The codicil we discussed last year." "The one regarding the distribution of liquid assets?" Henderson asked, opening a file. "Yes," Evelyn said. She took a deep breath. "And I want to add a clause, a character clause." "Mom, what is this?" Denise asked, a nervous laugh bubbling up. "Character clause? We aren't in a Victorian novel." Evelyn turned her head slowly to look at her daughter. "We might as well be, Denise, considering the fiction you all have been living." She looked at Henderson. "I want it written down. Any beneficiary who has been found to have committed fraud, identity theft, or financial misrepresentation against another family member is to be automatically disinherited from the estate. Their share will be redirected to the St. Louis Public Library Fund." The silence that followed was absolute. It was the sound of 3 futures evaporating at once. Harper gasped. It was a sharp, involuntary sound, like she had been punched in the gut. "Mom!" Ron shouted, stepping forward. "You can't do that. That is, you are not thinking clearly. The medication is messing with your head." "I am perfectly lucid. Ronald," Evelyn said, "I know exactly what day it is. I know exactly who is in this room, and I know exactly what your daughter and your son-in-law did to Madison." "That was a misunderstanding," Denise shrieked. She looked at the lawyer, her face pale. "Mr. Henderson, you can't listen to this. She is confused. Madison has been filling her head with lies. There was no fraud. It was a business dispute." "I saw the letter." "Denise," Evelyn said softly. "The one you wrote to Madison. I saw it before she left. You threatened her. You told her she was killing the family if she didn't let you steal her name." "I was trying to keep the peace," Denise cried. Tears were streaming down her face now, but they were tears of panic, not sorrow. "We have bills, Mom! We are drowning! How can you cut us off? We are your flesh and blood." "And Madison is my flesh and blood, too," Evelyn said. "But you treated her like an organ donor. You harvested her." "This is ridiculous," Harper spat. She turned on me, her face twisted into a mask of ugly fury. "You did this. You came back here and whispered in her ear while she was sick. You manipulated her. You want it all for yourself, don't you? You greedy witch." "I don't want a dime," I said calmly. "I make my own money." "Harper, that is the difference between us." "Mr. Henderson," Evelyn said. "Draft it. Now. I want to sign it today. I will prepare the document immediately. Evelyn, Henderson said, scribbling furiously on his notepad. He looked at the family with cool professional distaste. You are making a mistake. Mom, Ron said, his voice low and threatening. You are going to regret this. I regret a lot of things, Ron, Evelyn said, closing her eyes again, exhausted by the effort. But protecting Madison isn't one of them. Now get out, all of you, except Madison. They left, but they didn't leave quietly. I heard them in the hallway. I heard the muffled screaming. I heard Denise wailing about the house. I heard Harper saying, "She can't do this. We have to stop her." I stayed by the bed until Evelyn fell asleep. I watched her chest rise and fall, marveling at the strength it took to drop a nuclear bomb on your own family while lying in an ICU bed. I left the hospital 2 hours later. It was dark. The parking lot was slick with ice. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Sarah, my lawyer in Seattle. Sarah: Don't answer calls from unknown numbers. We just got a ping on the legal database. Madison: What is it? Sarah: A petition was filed an hour ago in the street. Charles County Circuit Court. Emergency guardianship and conservatorship. I stopped walking. I stood there in the freezing wind, staring at the phone. Sarah: Petitioners are Ronald and Denise Cook. They are alleging that Evelyn Hart is mentally incapacitated and under the undue influence of an estranged relative with a history of emotional instability. That is you. Madison: They are asking the court to freeze her assets and void any legal documents signed in the last 48 hours. They hadn't wasted a second. While I was sitting by her bedside, holding her hand, they were calling a lawyer. They were filing paperwork to declare their own mother incompetent just to stop her from cutting them out of the will. They were willing to strip her of her dignity, her autonomy, and her mind, just to keep their access to her bank account. I felt a cold rage settle in my chest, heavier and harder than anything I had felt before. This wasn't just about me anymore. This wasn't about a website or a stolen identity. This was about them trying to erase a woman who had just tried to stand up for what was right. I got into my rental car. I didn't drive to the hotel. I drove to a 24-hour copy shop. I needed to print everything: the emails, the chat logs, the fake website screenshots, the letter from Denise, the police report I had drafted but hadn't filed yet. I called Sarah back. They want to fight? I said, my voice steady. They want a hearing, Sarah said. It is scheduled for Friday morning. Emergency session. If they win, they get control of Evelyn's medical care and her finances. They will revoke Mr. Henderson's access. They will tear up that amendment to the will before the ink is dry. And if I win? If you win, Sarah said, you prove they are acting in bad faith. You prove the fraud. The judge will likely appoint a neutral guardian, or maybe even you. But Madison, if we go into that courtroom, we have to burn them. We have to show the judge everything. The identity theft, the wire fraud, the coercion. You can't protect them anymore. I am not trying to protect them, I said. I am trying to bury them. Then get ready, Sarah said. I am flying out on the first flight tomorrow. We are going to court. I hung up. I looked at the stack of documents in the passenger seat. It was a dossier of betrayal. It was the anatomy of a family that had decided to eat its own young, and now, its own old. The phone buzzed again. It was a text from Harper. Harper: We are doing this for her own good. She is sick. Madison, you are confusing her. Just go back to Seattle. If you leave now, we will drop the petition. We can forget this ever happened. It was the final offer, the final attempt to gaslight me into submission. Go away, and we will stop hurting her. I typed my reply. Madison. See you in court. I blocked the number. I sat in the dark car, listening to the wind howl outside. I knew what Friday meant. It meant I would have to stand in front of a judge and dismantle my parents. I would have to call my sister a criminal on public record. I would have to destroy the image of the Cook family forever. But as I thought about Grandma Evelyn's hand in mine, frail but fierce, I realized something. The family was already destroyed. They destroyed it the moment they looked at me and saw a credit card instead of a daughter. They destroyed it the moment they looked at Evelyn and saw an inheritance instead of a mother. I wasn't the demolition crew. I was just the one signing the condemnation order. I started the car. The engine roared to life. I was ready to be the noise they couldn't ignore. The hearing took place on a Friday morning in a small, windowless courtroom in the St. Charles County Courthouse. It was not the dramatic, wood-paneled arena you see on television crime dramas. It was a functional, sterile room with fluorescent lighting that hummed with a low-grade headache frequency and carpet that smelled of industrial cleaner. I sat on the left side of the table with Sarah, my attorney. On the right side sat my parents, Harper and Logan. They were huddled together, a tight knot of anxiety and resentment. They had hired a family friend to represent them, a real estate lawyer named Mr. Gable, who looked like he would rather be anywhere else in the world than defending a competency hearing against a fraud allegation. The judge, a woman named Honorable Davies, with glasses perched on the end of her nose and a demeanor that suggested she had zero patience for family theatrics, looked over the file. "We are here regarding the emergency petition for guardianship of Evelyn Hart," Judge Davies said, her voice dry. "But I see a counter-motion filed by Ms. Hart's counsel regarding financial exploitation and identity theft." She peered over her glasses at the defense table. "Mr. Gable, your clients are alleging Ms. Hart is incompetent. Ms. Cook's counsel is alleging your clients are trying to seize control of the estate to cover up criminal activity. Those are two very different stories. Your Honor." "Mr. Gable started, standing up and buttoning his jacket nervously. "My clients are simply concerned children. Ms. Hart is in the ICU. She's been making erratic decisions, changing her will while on heavy medication. We just want to protect her." "Protect her?" Sarah stood up. She didn't shout. She didn't wave her arms. She simply picked up a binder 3 inches thick and dropped it on the table. The thud echoed in the silence. "Your Honor," Sarah said, "we have prepared a timeline of events that demonstrates the petitioner's motivation is not protection, but predation. We have evidence that the petitioners have engaged in a systematic campaign of wire fraud, identity theft, and impersonation using the respondent's granddaughter, my client, Madison Cook, as the vehicle." Judge Davies raised an eyebrow. "Proceed." For the next hour, Sarah dismantled them. It was not a fight. It was an autopsy. She displayed the screenshots of the Cook-Pierce Security Partners website. She showed the side-by-side comparison of my real bio and the fabricated one Harper had written. She played the recording of the voicemail Logan left for Dr. Eris. "The petitioners claim Ms. Hart is incompetent because she threatened to disinherit them," Sarah said, pacing slowly before the bench. "But Ms. Hart's decision was a direct response to discovering this." She projected a slide on the wall. It was a bank statement from the fraudulent LLC. On December 22nd, a deposit of $5,000 was made by Dr. Eris, Sarah noted. "Mr. Pierce, could you explain to the court what security assets were purchased with this retainer?" Logan stood up. He looked pale, his suit hanging loosely on his frame. We were setting up the office. Infrastructure." "Infrastructure," Sarah repeated. "Is that what we are calling the transmission repair for a Ford F-150? She clicked the remote. A transaction record appeared. A one-auto repair, $4,200. Date, December 23rd. And here, Sarah clicked again. December 24th, Home Depot, $800, lumber and drywall, for the kitchen renovation at the home of Ronald and Denise Cook. The courtroom went deadly silent. I looked at my parents. Ron was staring at his hands, his face a mask of shame. Denise was looking at the judge, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "They didn't buy servers, Your Honor," Sarah said. "They fixed their truck. They fixed their kitchen. They used money stolen from a stranger, under the guise of my client's professional reputation, to pay for their lifestyle." "It was a loan!" Harper blurted out, jumping to her feet. We were going to pay it back. Madison is making us look like criminals, but we are just a family trying to survive. She has millions. She doesn't understand what it is like to wonder if the lights will stay on. Sit down, Ms. Cook Pierce, the judge snapped. But Harper was on a roll. She turned to me, tears streaming down her face, the same tears that usually worked so well on Instagram. Maddie, please, tell them. Tell them we talked about the business. You said you wanted to help. You said we were partners. Sarah looked at me. I nodded. Your Honor, Sarah said. Regarding the claim of partnership, I would like to read into the record a text message sent from Harper Cook Pierce to Logan Pierce on December 10th. Harper froze. Sarah picked up a piece of paper. This was retrieved during the discovery phase from the cloud backup of the business phone. She read it aloud, her voice clear and cutting. Don't worry about the credentials. We just need to use Madison's name to hook the whales. Once they sign the contract and send the deposit. Who cares? She is so desperate for us to like her. She won't do anything even if she finds out. She is pathetic like that. I felt the words hit me physically. She is pathetic like that. I looked at Harper. She wasn't crying anymore. She was staring at the table, her face draining of all color. The victim act had evaporated, leaving only the ugly, naked truth of her contempt. Pathetic. Judge Davies repeated the word. She looked at Harper with an expression of pure ice. That is an interesting way to describe the sister whose identity you stole. Logan tried to intervene. Your Honor, that was private venting. It doesn't prove intent to defraud. Mr. Pierce, the judge said, you took money for services you could not provide. You spent it on home repairs. That is not venting. That is theft. Denise stood up then. My mother. She looked small and frail, clutching her purse with white knuckles. Your Honor, please, she said, her voice trembling. We are a good family. We go to church. We have never been in trouble. Madison. She is confusing things. She has always been difficult, detached. We were just trying to keep everyone together. Tight-knit families share things. We share names. We share burdens. You can't punish us for loving each other too much. Mrs. Cook, the judge interrupted, leaning forward. I have heard enough about love and family in this courtroom to last me a lifetime. Let me be very clear. Familial relation is not a license for exploitation. Being a mother does not give you the right to cannibalize your daughter's credit. Being a sister does not give you the right to wear her reputation like a costume. She slammed her gavel down, a sound that felt like a guillotine blade dropping. The petition for guardianship is denied with prejudice, the judge ruled. Ms. Hart is clearly capable of identifying who has her best interests at heart. Furthermore, I am forwarding the transcript of this hearing to the district attorney's office for review regarding the allegations of fraud. No, Logan shouted. Please, we will pay it back. We will do anything. Then you will sign the agreement Ms. Cook's counsel has prepared, the judge said. Right now, in this room, and you will consider yourselves lucky if she doesn't press for immediate arrest. We moved to the settlement room. It was over. The fight had gone out of them. The exposure had been total. Sarah laid the document on the table. It was brutal in its simplicity. Complete dissolution of Cook Pierce Security Partners, LLC, full restitution to doctor, heiress and all other victims within 90 days. A permanent injunction preventing them from ever using the name Cook in any business capacity related to security or consulting. A no-contact order for 5 years. Logan signed first. His hand was shaking so badly he could barely hold the pen. Harper signed next. She didn't look at me. She just stared at the paper, tears dripping onto the legal jargon. My parents signed last. Ron put the pen down and looked at me. You happy now? He rasped. You won. You beat your own family. I didn't want to beat you, Dad, I said quietly. I just wanted you to stop stealing from me. You are cold, Denise whispered. I don't know where you came from. You aren't my daughter. No, I said. standing up and gathering my coat. I am the background noise, remember? And now, the room is finally quiet. I walked out of the courthouse. I didn't look back. I didn't feel a surge of joy. I felt a deep, profound exhaustion. But underneath it, the solid ground of truth. I went back to the hospital one last time. Evelyn had been moved out of the ICU. She was sitting up, eating lime jello. Mr. Henderson was there. He handed me a copy of the new will. "It is done," he said. I looked at the document. The bulk of the estate, the land, the investments, was placed into the Evelyn Hart Community Scholarship Fund. It would pay for technical education for underprivileged girls in St. Louis. The house my parents were so desperate to renovate, was to be sold upon Evelyn's death, with the proceeds going to the trust, and for the family, to my daughter Denise and her husband Ronald, and to my granddaughter Harper. I leave the sum of $1 each, and the forgiveness of the debts they incurred in my name, provided they never contact me again. $1, I whispered. "It is a legal necessity," Evelyn said, swallowing a spoonful of jello. "So they can't claim I forgot them. I remembered them perfectly. I remembered exactly what they are worth." She looked at me. "And for you, Madison, I left you nothing." I looked up, surprised. "Nothing financial," she corrected. "You don't need my money. You have your own. But I left you my journals, 50 years of them, so you will know that you come from a line of women who survived. And I left you the instruction to take that dog you have been talking about and go home." "The dog?" I smiled. "You need something to love that won't ask for a credit card number," she said. "Go back to Seattle. Madison, your life is waiting. This was just a layover." I kissed her forehead. She smelled of hospital soap and iron will. "Goodbye, Grandma. Go make some noise, child," she said. I flew back to Seattle that night. The plane cut through the dark sky, leaving the Midwest behind in a sea of black. I didn't drink the champagne the flight attendant offered. I drank water. I wanted to be clear-headed. I landed in the rain. It was the heavy, soaking rain of the Pacific Northwest, washing the dust of Missouri off my skin. 2 days later, I walked into the Seattle Humane Society. He was in the back kennel, a mix of shepherd and something scruffy and unknown. He had one ear that flopped over and eyes that were watchful, intelligent, and a little bit sad. He didn't bark like the other dogs. He just sat there, watching me, his tail giving a slow, tentative thump against the floor. "He is a bit shy," the volunteer said. "He came from a hoarding situation, lots of noise, lots of chaos. He tends to hide in the background." I knelt down. I pressed my hand against the wire mesh. "Hey there," I whispered. The dog stood up. He walked slowly to the front of the cage. He sniffed my hand. Then, he pressed his wet nose against my fingers and let out a long sigh. "I know," I said softly. "I know exactly how that feels." I adopted him. I named him Cypher, a code, a puzzle. Something valuable that you have to work to understand. The final scene of this chapter of my life wasn't played out in a courtroom or a boardroom. It happened on a Tuesday evening in Belltown. I was walking Cypher along the waterfront. The rain was falling softly, creating halos around the streetlights. The city was humming, the sound of cars on the viaduct, the distant horn of a ferry, the chatter of people leaving restaurants. For 33 years. I had felt like that noise was drowning me out. I had felt like I had to scream to be heard. And even then, no one listened. I stopped by the railing and looked out at the dark water. The lights of the city reflected on the surface, dancing and fracturing. Cypher sat down beside me, leaning his heavy weight against my leg. I reached down and buried my hand in his fur. He looked up at me, his eyes full of absolute, unconditional trust. He didn't want my money. He didn't want my connections. He just wanted to be with me. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the cold, clean air. I wasn't the background noise anymore. I was the signal. I was the one who had tuned the frequency. I had removed the static, and what was left was a clear, strong tone. I looked at the city. "We are okay," I said to the dog, and to myself. "We are loud enough." I turned and walked back toward my apartment, my heels clicking a steady, rhythmic beat on the pavement, joining the symphony of the city not as an echo, but as a lead instrument. Thank you so much for listening to Madison's story. It has been a journey of finding a voice in a world that wanted to keep her quiet. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Are you listening from a rainy city like Seattle, or somewhere sunny? Please comment below with your location and your thoughts on how Madison handled her family. I read every single one. And if you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to the channel Lucy Revenge Stories. Smash that like button and hit the hype button to help this story get recommended to more people who might need to hear it. Stay safe, and remember, never let anyone treat you like background noise.